One of the knights suddenly bursts into the room and demands to know if a man with silver hair, about 20 years old, and a woman with brown hair and green eyes have been seen here. He presses the blade of his sword to the man, who screams and swears he's never seen anyone like him. The old man adds irritably that so many people pass through the tavern every day that it's hard to remember them all. Someone approaches the captain and assures him that he doesn't think the people they need are here, which means the search should continue. The man answers negatively and, looking at the tracks, concludes that the fugitives have changed their clothes. The boy clenches his fists and curses under his breath. After this, he sharply swings his sword and orders everyone to move towards the station without wasting a second. He grins, declaring that he'll catch Maddie very soon. Meanwhile, the main character is already riding the train. Someone turns to Maddie and remarks that she seems quite comfortable in men's clothing. He asks how much longer he has to pretend to be a woman. The heroine quietly replies that they've already discussed this, because it's not appearance that matters, but what's on the inside. Besides, she's already beautiful, so she should sit up straight and more confidently. And her hair color is too flashy. The man simply asks him to stop, and the heroine presses the newspaper to his mouth and suggests that he be quieter. He glances at the newspaper and reads the news that the Grand Duke of Londonese love wasn't deterred even by the difference in their status. He married a girl from the slums, whom he had been secretly dating for several months. Despite warnings and sidelong glances, the Duke staged a lavish wedding, spending a fortune on his poor lover. The heroine remarks that she looks stunning in the portrait. Someone on the train asks in surprise if his lordship really did marry a commoner. Another counters that calling her a commoner is insulting, since she's from the slums. Another passenger says that an acquaintance of his from London claimed that the Duke and the girl were crazy about each other, although the beloved herself was allegedly completely out of her mind. There are rumors that the Duke has changed a lot, and has he also lost his mind? After this, the Duke turns to Maddie and asks how much longer they have to go. She replies that it's time for them to leave. The blonde man asks to wait, and the lady takes off the hat of one of the passengers, and at the same time, grabs the glasses. The girl promises that he will soon be able to take off the dress, and the interlocutor clarifies whether this is true. Maddie answers affirmatively and adds that he should now prepare to jump. Julian screams in horror as the train is still moving. The heroine wonders why he froze and asks if he has never jumped from a train. He replies that, of course, no, and is indignant at who she takes him for. The girl notices that he always screams when he is worried and declares that she is leaving. Julian shouts that it's dangerous, but the girl is already flying off the train. She nimbly slides down the slope and lands confidently. The guy asks if she's okay and if she's hurt, and the heroine just turns around and offers him her hand. He asks if she is serious, because she constantly does crazy things and he can only worry. Afterwards, he jumps after her, and his wig flies off. Julian prays to God that he won't regret loving Maddie. A few months ago, a maid asked if the Duke had left today. Another replied that yes, he had gone back to the slums. The man drinks every night without stopping, and it is painful to watch because such behavior would have broken the heart of the late Mr. Haladin. Grand Duke Ulican Kun Londonese is the son of Crown Prince Hilden and the only nephew of the Emperor. Unfortunately, his uncle destroyed Ulican's family, and now the Duke is forced to hide his true face from the Emperor. He sees his nephew as nothing more than a threat to his rule. The boy thinks about the slums and understands that no matter how many times he goes there, he still can't get used to the noise of this place. At that moment, someone loudly demands that the old man bring beer to their table. The interlocutor asks if the girl will really play again, and she asks not to worry because she is just having fun. A private client is paying for the alcohol, so he shouldn't grumble, or he'll get wrinkles. The man grumbles, calls her a little idiot, and orders her to sit down, promising to bring everything. The heroine thanks him, and the other guy asks if Maddie was locked up again. Another one asks how long they kept her this time. The girl replies that their conversations are making her ears ache, adding that she drank too much today and fell asleep in the wrong place. The man admits he thought she'd been caught stealing again. Maddie replies that masters of their craft aren't taken lightly. Another man asks if she has any money. She retorts that what kind of soldier would go out onto the battlefield without ammunition, and notices a guy with blonde hair. The girl says that she has never seen him before, and he doesn't look like a gambler, so why did the young gentleman come here? The Duke thinks a smart woman is dangerous and best left alone. He decides he's had enough for today. He wishes everyone a pleasant game, and Maddie asks the young gentleman to leave her at least a little money. Then the lady smiles and announces that she's leaving too. The man is surprised, as the cards have only just been dealt. The girl explains that she didn't sleep well and wants to rest at home. After some time, she goes after that guy, and he warns her that if she wants to cheat him for money, now is not the best time. The heroine thinks how cold he is and says that his words are cruel. Is this really how gentlemen behave now? The Duke snaps back that he has no intention of entertaining the madwoman and tells her to get out. He notices a mark on her hand, the same kind they leave in prison cells. It becomes obvious that she's a fraud. At that moment, someone appears behind her. While the girl is talking about his intense gaze, the man behind her swings at her. He is about to strike, but the lady deftly dodges and asks who he is. She says he scared her and asks what he wants. He says he's a building materials dealer. He then shouts that she is a filthy creature and asks if she has any idea how long he has been looking for her. The man demands that she give him his wife back the easy way. The woman replies that she doesn't understand what he's talking about and that she doesn't have anyone's wife. The merchant yells at her to stop talking nonsense, knowing she helped her escape. Maddie replies that the poor thing was always covered in bruises, and if she'd been treated better, she wouldn't have run away. She advises him to take the hint and leave his wife alone. The Duke knows he could beat this guy up too, so he should leave him alone. He notices a cleaver in the merchant's hands. He yells at the girl to tell him where his wife is, otherwise he'll bury her. The heroine realizes she definitely won't be able to get out of it now and says he's convinced her, but she adds that if she wins, he shouldn't throw any more tantrums. She assures him that she can easily knock such an idiot off his feet, but the man shouts that she will soon fall into eternal sleep. While the Duke tries to stop the situation, the girl shoots. The merchant looks at his leg, goes into shock, and screams in pain. Thus begins a wild life with Maddie. The merchant indignantly shouts that this is unfair. He asks why she uses a gun in a fight. The girl suggests he take a closer look. She just pulled the trigger with one finger, and he was already down. After all, she warned him that he would fall instantly. The lady admits that when she holds this nasty thing, she immediately feels like drinking. After this, she turns to the young gentleman and suggests that they go somewhere quieter and have a drink. The guy covers his ears, and the girl wonders what's wrong with him and whether he was really scared of the shot. She asks if he's okay and offers to help, but he screams at her not to touch him. He adds that she shouldn't even think about following him because she doesn't want to get involved with such a person. The heroine sighs and says okay, after which she asks who wants a drink. It's not she who pays for the alcohol, but the building materials dealer. Josh, shocked, asks if he really has to buy it. Meanwhile, the Duke goes home and remembers how someone addressed him. The man said that Julian must survive no matter what, and then the woman fell into eternal sleep. Now the boy is wondering what to do next. He can't fall into eternal sleep like his mother and father. First the father disappeared, and 3 months later his body was found in the lake. All that remained of the strong man was a bloated mass, vaguely human-like. The imperial family claimed that it was a self-inflicted act of plunging into eternal sleep, but there was no reason for such an act. They were an ideal, happy family. Their mother's descent into eternal sleep proved no less mysterious. Mom suffered from an unknown illness, and on the day she fell into eternal sleep, her hands turned as blue as Dad's. They didn't look for the guilty ones, and the boy understood everything anyway, but didn't dare say it. Even thinking ill of this man was a sin. He inherited the throne after the boy's father fell into eternal sleep, and his name was Lafayette Paragon Londanis. His father was the crown prince, meaning he was next in line. The boy knew he had to survive. From that day on, he pretended to be crazy, portraying an idiot who had lost interest in politics. He was nothing but trouble, so his uncle took the throne. Julian also recalls him saying he understood his feelings. He insisted that he too had lost a brother and sister-in-law and advised her to pull herself together. The boy thought, what a cruel joke this was. After all, the emperor will plunge him into eternal sleep if he starts behaving as befits his title. Julian realizes that he must do something crazy to make sure everyone is convinced that he is not capable of taking the throne. But at that moment, someone throws a bag over his head and knocks him to the floor. The Duke wonders if it is a robber or an assassin, but when he reaches for his sword, he is hit on the head. They put a rope around his neck, he starts to choke, and understands that this could be the end of his life. Suddenly, someone pushes the attacker away. The Duke rips off the bag and sees Maddie. The girl neutralizes the robbers one by one. At that moment, someone grabs her by the clothes. He asks if she doesn't understand who she shouldn't mess with. The lady grabs his arm in response. Then he hits him with his knee, and when he grabs his face, he adds a front blow. She takes out a dagger. The man begs him to wait, but the lady no longer listens and plunges him into eternal sleep. The Duke looks at her in surprise and thinks that she has not left him alone since their first meeting. Where a girl from the slums got a firearm and such skills is a mystery. The thought occurs to him that the emperor has indeed sent her. At that moment, the heroine comes closer. She asks them to wait, takes the money from the robbers, and notices how heavy their bags of coins are. He says that this will make his back hurt and hands the Duke a bag, calling it payment for the brooch. The guy doesn't understand what he's talking about, and the girl is surprised that he hasn't noticed yet and that then she wouldn't have to pay. She says the young gentleman is a disappointment, because in the slums, if you're not careful, even your last pair of pants will be stolen. The lady takes the rope and jokes that it might be his new jewelry. The guy, shocked, screams, wondering if she really stole his brooch. The lady calmly replies that yes, the very one from his chest. She was upset when he refused to have a drink with her, saw the brooch, and decided not to miss the chance. If he'd agreed to play poker with her, he'd have left without a penny, but instead, he got away with just one brooch. The Duke asks if she's truly mad. The lady replies, a little, and immediately offers to help him up. She also hints that she wouldn't mind seeing him again. She liked him, and he's a rare beauty. The Duke opens the bag of money. Inside, he sees his portrait and wonders if they were mercenaries, and yet it was this madwoman who saved him. He asks her to wait, realizing this is his chance. The Duke asks for her time and realizes this girl has the power to make the Emperor forget him forever. The heroine notices how the guy grabs her hand and suddenly breaks away. She says that even if there is no one around, it is not worth grabbing people like that. But the Grand Duke turned out to be braver than she thought. The man doesn't understand what she's talking about because he's just in a hurry. Then he asks how she knew who he was. The girl points to his attire and silver hair. It shouldn't have been hard to guess, except perhaps the foreign mercenaries wouldn't have recognized him. The Duke remarks that she knew everything, but behaved insolently, and asks if she is afraid of the camera for insulting the imperial family. The girl agrees, reminding him that he clearly didn't grab her for the sake of empty talk. The lady says she understands him, and suggests they go. A short time later, they're already heading on. The guy wonders if he made a mistake, because even if she saved him from the mercenaries, this does not mean that she is on his side. If he is kidnapped in such a place, he will definitely not be found, which means he needs to be prepared to run. Meanwhile, the girl welcomes him into her modest shop and invites her dear customer inside. The guy wonders if this is really a secret room right in the wall and follows. She offers to sit down and discuss his case. He complies, and the heroine nods as if everything is settled. Today they have a particularly distrustful client, which is not surprising, since mercenaries often come for his soul. The girl says she will figure it out, and adds that he already knows her name. She asks why he wants to hire her, and if he needs personal security, or someone who will cover their tracks after their walks. She suggests discussing money and believes a daily fee of 100 Tylons would be more advantageous. The Duke says he wants to ask her something first, and wants to know if she is loyal to the Empire. The girl replies that she's from the slums, and the Empire doesn't exist for her. Home is where she sleeps, and the boss is the one who pays the most, and the client is already starting to irritate her. The man says that they will wait with security for now, because he still needs to make sure of something. He must be sure that she was not sent by the enemy, and that she has enough strength to protect him from everything. The heroine reaches for her leg, and the Duke thinks that there is a weapon hidden there, perhaps a dagger. Now he understands why she wears a multi-layered skirt, and realizes that she knows her business. The girl, embarrassed, asks where he is looking, and throws a dagger that flies past his head. The guy turns around and sees a beetle pinned to the wall. The heroine says she doesn't like touching insects. The Duke admits he's impressed. The girl asks if he's afraid the Emperor sent her. She asks you to believe her, because she is a businesswoman, and work is above all else for her. The lady declares she's willing to give up even her liver or gallbladder if the price is good. She asks if he sees the sacrifices she's willing to make for the client. The Duke asks how he can tell she's not lying. She replies by asking if he knows why the knife didn't hit him. She declares that he will become her client. The boy looks at the insect and realizes that if she were on the Emperor's side, he would have long ago fallen into eternal sleep. He asks what if he was a target from the start and looked like someone in need of protection. The heroine replies that no, he's just cute. Maddie admits she went after him because of his looks. She likes his silver hair and pale skin, and he's willing to pay for security. She clarifies whether this is true, because such an order happens once in a lifetime, and she will protect it. Maddie says she takes her job seriously and, for the right amount, will dispose of his enemies secretly or in his presence. She can even deliver the assassin's head, but that will cost more. The price doubles for distant lands, but there is no extra charge for a nice guy. Maddie insists she's doing a great job, but the Duke says he doesn't want to see her put anyone to sleep forever. The bodies will have to be disposed of, after all. The heroine agrees, adding that she's hungry, so after the deal, she should have a snack. The Duke reminds her that the bodies need to be removed too. The girl replies that it's a deserted alley and they'll sort it out later. She jokes about him washing the dishes right after eating, but he doesn't understand the comparison. The lady concludes that he is a thrifty person, and the Duke asks why he is writing this down at all. The heroine says he's in someone else's shop and should behave decently. The Duke sighs heavily and asks who taught her this. Maddie replies that she doesn't remember and has forgotten everything that happened before she was 16 or 17. She is proficient with blades, firearms, and unarmed combat, so she has likely been practicing these skills since childhood. She returns the dagger to him, and the Duke is surprised when she managed to steal it, and is glad that the Emperor did not hire her. He asks if she is sure she is not from a noble family. The girl lifts her skirt, and the Duke turns away but still notices her legs. He sees a multitude of scars and wonders when she got them. Maddie says that if he's embarrassed, he should look at his hands. A noble woman wouldn't have scars like that. She's just Maddie. She has no past or parents. She's a common criminal. Therefore, she will protect the gentleman if he trusts her. The guy asks her to decide whether she will treat him with respect. Maddie smiles and says that she will protect him secretly, so there is no point. They are about to discuss the price, but the guy suddenly grabs her hand and says that he doesn't need security. Julian realizes that he sounds cold, and the girl jokes that he really wanted to ask her out on a date. The Duke replies that he does not, and realizes that he is about to enter into a marriage that will seem madness to the Emperor. He proposes marriage to the lady, and realizes that he is forever closing his path to the throne. Julian says he's convinced she's not tied to the throne and won't let it be put into eternal slumber without a fight. You don't make such a request to just anyone, but she does. The heroine immediately stops him and says that she does not agree. The Duke insists, and the lady asks if he really thinks she's willing to do anything for money. Maddie declares that life isn't for sale, and he names 100 million. The girl turns around in amazement and asks again if she heard wrong. The Duke thinks that even this is not enough for her, but he cannot back down. He offers $1 billion and a divorce in 3 years, after which he will pay everything. He will cover her departure from the Empire. They will be a couple only in public and without unnecessary touching. He asks what she will say, and the heroine admiringly calls him dear. She wonders where he's been all these years. Soon, the lady signs the contract. The first point is a flashy wedding, the second is a saccharine, public love affair. Julian is puzzled by the wording, suggesting a different approach. The heroine sighs and says that they need to put on a show, surprised by his love of complex words. The third point is to throw away decency. The fourth is an advance payment of 100 million immediately after the wedding. She is also entitled to monthly maintenance, and he will pay the remainder in 3 years. Ultimately, Maddie will receive $1 billion, not including the payments. The fifth clause is that any unnecessary touching is prohibited. The heroine clarifies that the agreement is valid as long as they both live, and she undertakes to protect Julian with all her might. She still asks why he does this and why he chose her, because the conditions seem strange. The Duke replies that it doesn't matter. The agreement is beneficial to both of them, and she just needs to protect it. Maddie says she understands, and the guy is surprised that she understands faster than he expected. She concludes that the Emperor ordered the potential heir to be put into eternal sleep, so Julian pretended to be a fool. They won't want to see someone like that on the throne, and she will become a stain that will completely tarnish it. The Duke acknowledges her insight and does not understand why someone with such intelligence and skills should live in the slums, wasting time on alcohol and gambling. He says that with her abilities she could serve in the guard, so why live in filth and steal trinkets? Maddie replies that she doesn't know, and perhaps she just doesn't want to be tied down to one place and dependent on someone. The guy asks her to stop, but the girl doesn't understand what he means. Julian tells her to stop being disrespectful and asks what people will think. Maddie replies that they'll think she's abandoned all decency. The Duke says that because of her, people will stop respecting him, and the girl reminds them that this is exactly what they are trying to achieve. She calls him darling again and says they have a whole empire to conquer, so they need to work hard. He asks her not to address him that way. Maddie asks why and suggests options, like a loved one or a treasure. She calls him her love and sweetie. Julian sighs and says that he understands her intention to disgrace him, but asks her to do it wisely, so that people will believe in their feelings. The girl says she understands, and adds a new point, that she would shame him wisely. The man agrees to sign the contract and asks for one more thing to be added. When he finishes writing, the lady demands to read it. He adds a clause that Maddie will not run away, despite threats and insults. If she breaks the contract, she will pay Julian 10 times the agreed amount. The heroine jokes that this is a cute way to forbid her from falling into eternal sleep and giving up, and even disguised with complex words. The man replies that he also wants to relive these 3 years, and the girl asks him to finish writing this. After signing the contract, she asks when the wedding will be. The Duke says he will propose first, and it must be dramatic. A few days later, while searching for the Grand Duke, someone calls out loudly for Riley. The head maid shouts at her to take the jacket and these shoes. The estate is in chaos, and one of the maids reminds her that the mistress has already given up the brown pair. The woman replies that it wasn't the color, but the pattern, and that these boots are neat and will fit. She wonders what's gotten into the Duke, who previously ignored requests to button his shirt and comb his hair. The woman says the reason is obvious. It's all about love, and it doesn't matter what noble family this lady is from, because fate clearly brought her and the Duke together. The head maid said that this girl has nothing but romance novels in her head. Her interlocutor assured her that it was high time for the Duke to find a beloved. At that moment, the butler approached the lady and asked her to bring clothes, because his lordship was already waiting. Riley immediately agreed and went to carry out the order, and another servant informed the butler that everything had already been delivered. The man praised Miley for a job well done and let him go. Then the butler noticed that before his lordship thought only about games, but now he was preparing for something serious. And did he really fall in love? Soon Julian was riding in a carriage, and the coachman announced that they had arrived. The man came out with a bouquet of flowers, remembering the lady's words that they had to lead the entire empire, and they had to try hard. He realized that he had to look happy and excited, and asked the coachman to wait, promising not to return alone. The coachman agreed, but asked with surprise what exactly his master meant. Julian decided that when they met, he would tell Maddie that he had dreamed of a future with her from the first moment he saw her. Then he will give her flowers and she will become his bride, so the speech should be inspiring, as if he is head over heels in love. They had agreed to meet here, and he looked around and wondered if she had run away. At that very moment she called out to him, as if he were her dearest, and asked why he had come so early. She said with a smile that she missed him, and the guy was surprised that she called him dear. He wondered if she had forgotten about their agreement, or if she simply didn't know how to be careful. Naidi turned to Julian and asked if he had really come again, since she herself wanted to visit him. The guy was embarrassed and wondered why it seemed like there was a completely different person in front of him. She said she liked his face, and he wondered if this strange girl really liked him. Maddie was surprised and asked if he bought her flowers, and he said yes. She thanked him, saying that she had never been given such magnificent bouquets. The girl added that he gave her many happy first moments, for which she is very grateful. Julian became embarrassed and suddenly noticed how hard his heart was beating. This was bad, because at least one of them had to remain sane, and he whispered that they were only pretending. Maddie replied with a smile that there were too many people around. He proposed so suddenly that she could hardly believe it, and she turned to him again. She whispered that he needed to concentrate, and Julian wondered if she had been playing all this time. She noticed that he had turned pale and suggested that they go somewhere. Quietly, she asked whether he wanted to convince the emperor that he was mad or not. He realized that she was right and decided to play along. Julian turned to Maddie, saying that the place was not the best, but he could no longer remain silent. The girl asked if he really wanted to say something, since she was already happy because of the bouquet. In her thoughts, she was rushing him, and the guy realized that the time had come to propose. He took her hand and asked her to marry him, and in surprise, the bouquet fell out of her hand. She apologized and said she thought she had misunderstood him, but he repeated that he was proposing. He offered her to live together, to be there always, because she is all he needs. People around her started congratulating her, saying that she had won this life. Someone noticed how much she blushed. Maddie screamed, apologizing to her darling, and he looked at her in shock. Julian realized that this was not the plan, and if she decided to run away, he would not be able to stop her, because she had dealt with two large men. He grabbed her hand, and she turned around with tears in her eyes. The Duke was surprised that he was able to hold her back and asked why she was running away. Maddie replied that she didn't want to get married, and he reminded her that they should get married and asked why. She cried out, "What will people say? Because they will think that she fell in love with him because of his status." She hadn't intended to marry him and didn't think it would go this far, and people around her started talking louder. Maddie asked why he kept giving her happy days again and again, when she already had enough, and a wedding was too much. Julian was confused, realizing that everything had not gone according to plan, and she threw the watch to him, telling him to take it. Then she threw the ring, demanding that he take away everything that reminded him of it, even the cufflinks. The man was shocked when she managed to steal his things and asked her to wait. Seeing her gaze, he froze, and she hit him in the chest, reminding him that he was a great duke of noble birth. She said that now he promises happiness, but when people start judging her, he will turn away, so let her go and keep the good memories. The Duke realized that the blows almost sent him into eternal sleep, and he wondered if she was trying to do this on purpose. Maddie grabbed him by the tailcoat and, moving closer, whispered for him to hug her. He did it and smelled the floral scent, and she asked him to tell her that he loved her. Julian confessed his love and promised to never leave her. Then she whispered for him to touch her lips with his thumb. He moved closer and they pretended to kiss, and people around her started congratulating her, calling her a rebel. Maddie sheepishly asked everyone to be silent and said that she wanted to be alone with her beloved because no one was stopping her from getting married. Julian thought how convincing this game looked, as if this was how a girl in love should behave. He realized that he had made the right choice and handed over the ring, saying that since their meeting his world had changed. He added that this world would always be like this now, and she asked with a smile if he was sure that she was the one. The Duke realized that to their minds the answer was obvious, and she would cover for him. After some time, the newspapers were full of articles about the scandalous affair between the Duke and the girl from the slums. That same evening, the entire empire learned of the proposal, and the aristocrats were amazed at his choice. The love story of a nobleman and a low-born girl astonished everyone, and his forays into the slums became a different story. Some said that love knows no bounds. Others found it incredibly romantic. Word spread quickly, and upon returning to the duchy, Julian warned Maddie to be careful. As she stepped out of the carriage, she asked with a smile if he would offer her his hand and thanked him, while the servants witnessed their love. Later, one of the workers asked why his lordship had brought a beggar into the house, since she was supposedly with him because of her position. The maid noticed that he was walking arm in arm with her and was clearly in love, and the cook doubted the girl's sincerity. He declared that he would not allow her to eat good food, but he was immediately stopped. It was the butler who said that this was his lordship's decision, and that they could only accept his solitude. Perhaps this woman could fill the void, and everyone at the table remarked on how harmonious they looked. Maddie thanked him for the sliced meat and handed him a piece. She said that she had wanted to do this for a long time, because before they only walked and never ate together. The servants were in shock, and the cook seemed to be begging the Duke to refuse. Julian remembered her instructions to look at her every few seconds and smile. He did so, but after tasting the food, his face changed slightly. He offered to swap plates with Maddie, and she wondered why. Julian explained that his meat was overcooked and he was too picky about what he ate. He suggested the chef had made a mistake, and Maddie said she wouldn't mind switching. When she tasted the potato, she smiled, and he asked if everything was okay. She replied that the butter was very soft and seemed to have honey in it. The Duke checked this with the cook, who confirmed it by adding the best honey. Maddie said it was delicious and asked if she could have some of his too, and he agreed. They smiled at each other, and the girl, looking at the potatoes, remembered the events of the previous night. Then one servant approached the dish with a syringe and took the sweet potato in his hands. He was immediately seized and asked if he had decided to poison the food. Soon the man lay blindfolded and his mouth covered. Maddie came up to him and told him that he had finally woken up and he recognized her voice. She told him not to move because he had that very poison in his mouth. It was not a syringe that was involved, but a vial plugged with cloth. She warned that the more he moved, the faster the poison was absorbed, and some of it had already gotten onto his tongue. The girl demanded to know who sent him, but he decided to remain silent, fearing for his family. She said there was no choice, the warehouse was abandoned, and it wouldn't be found anytime soon. The man tried to scream, but his body went numb, and he realized that it was the effect of the poison. He remembered the emperor's words about the paralyzing poison, which does not immediately plunge one into eternal sleep. He realized that it was a mistake not to run away, because with a large dose, paralysis would be the end. The man thought that this was how it would end and would like to explain himself if he were questioned, but at that moment he heard someone else enter the room and ask if everything was okay with the servant. The guy wonders if this is the Grand Duke of Londonese, and the main character says that there is no point in helping this man because he poisoned the food. His lordship replies that even that is not the way to treat a person. Every action has a reason, and Julian says that it is Miley, who served his family for more than 10 years, which means he was threatened. Miley would not wish him harm because the Duke was almost like a son to him, after which Julian removes the bandage from his mouth. He asks if it is true that he poisoned the food, and the servant, apologizing, admits that he was promised a lot of money, and Julian asks not to worry about the poison. Miley talks about the children and admits that he needed the money, although he sincerely regrets it. The Duke promises to bring an antidote, but Maddie says that he has already told everything, and the poison has spread. His lordship replies that Miley cannot be blamed because the responsibility lies with him, and he will still find an antidote. The servant cannot believe that after all this, the Duke remains kind to him. He decides to tell the truth and shouts out Montesando's name. Julian immediately comes up and says that he asked to remain silent, because he would be cured and sent away. Miley screams that she can't take it anymore, and the Duke asks him to calm down. After some time, the servant is taken away, and Maddie calls Julian a fool. She notices that his mouth was untied, but his eyes were left closed, and the ropes were loosely tightened. Jumping off the roof, the girl asks why they didn't poison him for real, since he was trying to put the Duke into eternal sleep. Julian replies that he won't allow anyone to be poisoned, but their plan worked. He adds that if questioned directly, the servant would remain silent, and her methods were too cruel. He remembers how she offered to lie about the poison, and then he allowed her to act in her own way. Julian also reminded her that she had eaten poisoned sweet potatoes and asked if the poison had worked. Maddie replies that she can't be taken that way, jokes about his anxiety, and he asks her not to waste time. She obediently goes and asks who this count is, and Julian replies that it is Montesando. He says that it is his uncle, and the girl immediately asks if she should put him into eternal sleep. The Duke screams, startling her, and she wonders why he is screaming again. He suddenly became gloomy, and she still had to take care of him for 3 more years. Julian assures that he will survive at any cost and will not fall into eternal sleep. He thanks her for saving his life and notices how nimbly she climbed onto the horse, asking why she sat in front. Maddie admits that she doesn't know how to ride a horse, but she will quickly learn with his help. She asks why he doesn't have security. It's high time. Julian replies that there used to be security, but everyone either fell into eternal sleep or ran away. He thinks that she might also get scared and leave in a couple of months. But the girl declares that she will then become his first guardian. The guy is surprised and sighs, realizing that today, he almost fell into eternal sleep. He asks her not to let the same thing happen, and she assures him that it won't happen. Maddie makes a billion-dollar joke, and Julian thinks he's going crazy. Perhaps it is the influence of this girl, because soon they return to the estate. As they approach the mansion, the servants watch them. Maddie says the walk has tired him out, and she's going to bed. Julian is silent, then takes her hand and asks if she will stay with him today. On the way to the room, she stops and asks how they can sleep together. He replies that after the wedding this will become a common thing and leads her further. In the room, he becomes serious and demands the return of the stolen item. Julian says it is a family ring and asks why she chose it. He adds that if she stole anything else, she should give it back, otherwise the servants will suspect her. The Duke is afraid that she might be branded a thief and reminds her about the billion. Maddie agrees and pours out everything she was hiding in her skirt. Julian is amazed because she has been here for less than a day. She seems to remember something else and hands him the contract. He doesn't believe that this is her copy of the contract. Julian snatches the paper and is shocked that she stole that too, and Maddie laughs at his habit of carrying documents in his pocket. The Duke is embarrassed and says that no one will touch his chest. The girl smiles and replies that anyone would want him. Julian asks to stop and announces new rules. He says she is forbidden from spontaneous thefts, and she jokes about sacrifices for the sake of a billion. The Duke asks the meaning of the agreement without decent behavior, and she agrees not to steal indiscriminately. He then adds a second rule, forbidding anyone from being put to eternal sleep in the heat of the moment. Maddie is outraged, asking what to do if she is threatened. He asks her to think and not run away from him. She smiles, calling it romantic, and he says he told the guards about the bodies. The guards are looking for witnesses, and the girl asks why he didn't clean up. Julian replies that then she would have been imprisoned for falling into eternal sleep. She is outraged that he is already ready to put her behind bars. He remembers his mother's words and says that it is to their advantage to stick together. Maddie agrees, and Julian says that they are in it until the very end. Then he notices how she begins to take off her dress and asks in surprise why. She smiles and reminds him that he brought her there himself late at night. The girl suggests doing what is expected of them, and he replies that he didn't plan on doing that. Julian reminds her of the clause in the contract, and she asks why he is so nervous. She says he looks like he's madly in love and has publicly announced his relationship. He replies that he only wanted to return what was stolen and does not intend to spend the night unconscious. Maddie says she's not offering anything extra. They just need to put on a show, because floors conduct sound well. She offers to rock the bed, and soon they lie down, and Maddie says she's tired. She adds that it is worth dirtying the sheets, and the Duke doubts whether this is necessary. Maddie asks if he wants to join in, because rumors notice everything. Julian clarifies whether they really need to deceive everyone. She asks if he wants to pay or go into eternal sleep. They start rolling around on the bed, and the Duke decides to let the world think what it wants. After all, next to him is a woman who is ready to protect him for a good sum. He believes the plan has been a success and asks not to agree if they offer more for his head. Maddie replies that she understands his concerns, as assassins often betray. But she values her reputation above all else. Julian asks about the 5 billion, and she confidently refuses. She likes men with silver hair, and his life is worth more than any money. The Duke promises a generous payment, and she replies that she understands. He even asks about 10 billion and is frightened by her thoughts. Maddie laughs and says she was joking when she suggested he sleep with her. Julian asks again, and she assures him that she will not lie to him. She puts out the candle and asks him not to make a sad face. Julian asks why she looks at his face so often. She replies that he is her first love and he should think less. She promises to deal with the bad guys and tells him to get some sleep. That morning at breakfast, the Duke realizes that their efforts have paid off. He remembers the maid's words about the bed creaking at night and becomes embarrassed. Julian realizes that Maddie knows her stuff and continues to play along. Suddenly, she hands over a letter and says that an urgent message has arrived. He replies that business is not discussed at the table, and she asks if this is true. She is about to throw away the letter, calling the sender an unpleasant character, but Julian snatches it away. Maddie remarks that this is inappropriate, and he asks her to speak more quietly. After reading the letter, Julian realizes that it is from his uncle. It talks about his choice, the memory of Crown Prince Haladin, and about tomorrow's dinner to talk about the future. The guy looks at his watch and realizes it's already 10 in the morning. He immediately tells Maddie to get ready, as she needs to change urgently. The girl, shocked, asks why she should even try to impress the man who wanted to poison him. Julian explains that the wedding requires the approval of 3 family members, which means they'll have to play by their rules for now. The main character nods understandingly and declares that then it's time to spend expensive money. The guy immediately warns her that he'll buy her everything she needs, as long as she doesn't steal anything. Maddie agrees, but wonders why he's so worried. After all, from the outside it looks like he's in love with her. Julian snaps back that he'd never fall in love with a girl like that, and she simply asks if he's sure, since feelings are unpredictable. The guy asks her not to think about a real relationship, and not to joke about it, because he is not in the mood. The girl calmly replies that he shouldn't worry, because she will never allow herself to fall in love. At that moment, a servant runs up and addresses his lordship. The Duke asks what happened, and is told it would be best for him to remain at the estate. An urgent matter has arisen, and the man is surprised because everything happened too suddenly. He wonders if it has something to do with Maddie and grimly notes that maybe they should have just gotten rid of the bodies. Julian says he understands and orders a maid to go with Maddie. The butler agrees. The Duke approaches Maddie and asks her to listen carefully, but the girl immediately declares that she knows that she cannot steal anything. And no one can be put into eternal sleep either. She asks if there are any other rules and whether she should not run away. Julian tells her not to cause trouble, to quickly choose her clothes and come right back. There's enough gossip already, so she should behave herself. The girl replies that she understands and adds that he shouldn't grumble and should keep quiet. She then turns her attention to the butler and says that he came with the maid. The Duke introduces Riley and says he trusts Maddie to her. The maid promises to look after her mistress and return soon. The main character waves to Julian and tells him to wait for her dressed up. When the man turns to the butler, he asks what is the matter and receives an answer. The Emperor sent a letter. At this moment, the maid is already leading the main character away. The butler looks after them angrily, deciding that this woman wants to seduce the master or profit from him. He's sure he'll make her run away in tears, while Maddie is surprised they're still driving through the garden. Riley sighs and explains that there is a huge garden around the estate, and after 2 large gates, they will leave the territory. It's a veritable park, and Maddie notes that the Duke's lands are truly vast. She asks the maid if she is comfortable sitting like this. The girl adds that there is no need to observe formalities and that one can speak freely. Riley replies that if the Duke marries her, she will become the mistress of the estate, so familiarity is unacceptable. Maddie asks not to look too far ahead and not to worry too much. Riley admits that there is some truth to these words and asks if she loves the Duke, and that is why she accepted the proposal. The main character replies that, of course, she loves him, but their positions in society are too different. The Duke is kind and noble, and if his relatives are against it, he will certainly back down. So she wants to enjoy every day at the estate. Riley begins to doubt his previous thoughts about her. But the maid asks what if his lordship loves too much and will not give in, and if Maddie is too pessimistic. The main character replies that marriage is not that simple because they are only engaged. Besides, she was from the slums, and if they met by chance, Riley wouldn't even talk to her. Maddie puts her hand on the maid's hand and asks for help choosing clothes, as this is the first time she has done this with someone. Riley wonders if she had no family, and the girl admits that she didn't have anyone, which is why she's nervous. The maid feels a desire to sympathize and thinks that Maddie's education is clearly not noble. She promises not to worry and to pick out the best outfit since the Grand Duke himself asked for it. Maddie thanks her. The girl says that even if she gets kicked out today, this trip will remain a happy memory. She asks the maid's name, admitting that she has trouble remembering names. She replies that her name is Riley. Maddie says it's a cute name and introduces herself in return. She allows himself to be addressed by name, and Riley understands that she is a sincere woman. Many would call her a sly fox, but now Riley simply replies that it's good, and she finds herself wanting to be her support. And Maddie secretly thinks that the maid has already succumbed to her charm, and she certainly won't let herself be pushed out so easily. She will stay, even if it means resorting to extreme measures. Soon the Count arrives at the estate. Julian says he is glad to see his uncle, and his uncle asks if he knows the reason for the visit. The Count is indignant at who allowed such an absurd proposal to be made and demands to see the woman. The Duke replies that she is preparing for the meeting, but will be a little late. Uncle remarks that he should have chosen more decent jewelry, otherwise he won't be taken seriously. He declares that he will find a worthy match for his nephew himself and asks not to interfere. Julian replies that he has already fallen in love, and his uncle asks if love will feed him. He attributes it all to youth and hot blood, and he orders people to listen to their elders, because there is a limit to everything, especially when it comes to a girl from the slums. At this point, a greeting is heard, and Maddie introduces herself, saying that it is nice to meet you. The Count is indignant and asks him not to shout, but the girl apologizes and jokes that she decided to help since he spoke so loudly. The Duke looks at Maddie and says she's beautiful. She asks him how he likes her outfit. Julian admits he was nervous, but her choice exceeded expectations. Maddie says it's the maid's doing and deserves a reward. The Duke confirms that Riley did a great job. He asks Maddie to sit down and she thanks him. The uncle wonders to himself how he can talk like that to a dirty girl who just screamed. He decides that she is from the slums anyway and will run away at the first pressure. Maddie offers to serve drinks and winks at the Duke. Julian is surprised at first, but then he realizes that she is up to something. The Count asks if the drinks are ready yet, and the girl confirms. She says the drinks are prepared for the Count. The man is surprised and asks if absinthe is dangerous in large quantities. Maddie replies that he is right, and that if you drink too much, you can fall into eternal sleep, but the drink tastes delicious. The Count wonders if she really knows about the poison, but he reassures himself that Julian would have looked different. Maddie raises her glass and offers them a drink. The Count hesitates, and the girl asks if this is his first time trying absinthe. She offers to drink first and, after taking a sip, says it's amazing. She adds that if the poison were as tasty, she would have allowed herself to be sent away without a doubt. The Count realizes that this woman knows everything and remembers Miley's disappearance. He was informed that Miley was missing, but he didn't pay any attention to it. Now he thinks Maddie got rid of Miley, which means Julian knows too. The Duke asks his uncle if he will give his blessing, and he understands that his nephew knows nothing. The Count asks them to wait, but Maddie takes a small bottle out of her bag. The man is shocked, and Julian wonders if she still has the drink. Maddie explains that the absinthe tastes better this way. The Duke asks her not to drink too much so as not to harm her health. She agrees. But when she is about to take a sip, the Count jumps up and demands that she spit it out. He's scared for her, and Maddie asks why he's so worried. Suddenly, she grabs her throat, and the man is horrified. Julian asks what's wrong with her, and the Count clutches his head and insists that she can't drink so much at once. He calls for a doctor, but Maddie calmly asks if he's surprised. She says she was just joking when she noticed his nervousness. The Duke smiles with relief and admits that she scared him. The Count sits back down in shock, and the bottle falls and breaks. He looks at the reflection in the shard, then leaves, saying that he needs to think things through. Julian invites his uncle to come again, and Maddie adds that she will also wait. The Duke whispers and asks how she could drink poison in front of him. Maddie replies that it was just regular alcohol and asks if he was worried about her. She says it was just a warning and that they will receive approval. Julian doubts her methods. Maddie replies that since he is alive, the wedding will be accepted and asks him not to be pessimistic. She declares that from now on, anyone who dares to threaten him will have to deal with her. She will sort it out personally and leave no traces if he trusts her. Julian asks her to wait and asks where she is going, since her room is on the other side. Maddie replies that she has business, and he demands the return of the poison taken from Miley. The girl says that it seems she really did drink real poison and admits her guilt. The man is shocked and wonders if she really drank the poison and will now also fall into eternal sleep, like his mother once did. The Duke loses his temper, curses, and says he knew it would come to this. He asks how much time has passed and declares he'll call a doctor right away, so the lady won't go anywhere. He demands that the girl stay put. The protagonist places her hand on his shoulder and assures him that everything is fine and that she won't fall into eternal sleep. The poison won't break her, her body will cope, she is alive now and will continue to live. The girl asks him not to show weakness in front of others because it will ruin his image and they are always being watched. The lady asks if he understands and repeats that she will be fine and will be back soon. The Duke wonders if they are really being watched and realizes that there are servants somewhere nearby. That's why she smiled so calmly, otherwise she wouldn't have shown him that soft smile. The man says okay, it's cold outside, and asks her not to forget her coat and to take care of herself. After this, he is about to leave, and the lady finds herself thinking that all this is beginning to seem surprisingly natural. She is surprised that this guy has no friends at all, because she just said goodbye, and he already started kissing her. After a while, someone knocks on the red-haired guy's door, and he opens it. He sees the main character, is surprised, and asks if it is Maddie, after which he lets her inside. The guy wonders why she didn't say anything, because he thought some drunk was barging in. The girl replies that she is being followed, and if they find out about him, there will be problems. The young man is frightened and asks if she's being followed, and if she brought them here. Maddie explains that if she disappeared before their eyes, it would arouse suspicion. The boy turns to his sister and admits that his heart almost stopped when he read the news of her engagement to the Grand Duke. He asks if she really decided to deceive the aristocrat and if she is not afraid of having to hide for the rest of her life. The protagonist realizes she forgot to explain everything to Knox. 7 years ago, he was holding the wallet in his hands. Then she met him on the street, he was a refugee, and she threatened to break his arms. Having returned the wallet to its owner, she apologized, and the boy was indignant that she was rummaging through the pockets herself. Maddie explained that the man was saving money for a gift for his daughter, and that he could not be harmed. Knox then muttered that it was probably nice to have your birthday celebrated, but what did it matter to him? She told him to watch his language, and said that if he was going to steal, he should steal wisely. Let him take from the rich, from those who will buy a new wallet without any problems. Then the girl taught him how to cheat and steal, and together they went through a lot. Now Knox asks if she plans to rob the Duke alone or if she has an accomplice. Maddie knows he has better instincts and agile hands, but she doesn't want to drag him into it. The young man is indignant and says that he also wants to participate, so let her allow him to help. The main character grabs him by the hand, sits him down and tells him to shut up, and he obeys. She understands that this job involves more than just protecting lives. She will never teach Knox how to put him into eternal sleep, and no one must know about the agreement. Maddie says it's not a lie and she really is getting married. The guy reminds her that she's fooled suitors before. He asks if she's really going to rob him and run away right before the altar. The girl replies that she is marrying him because he loves her for who she is. Knox is stunned and asks what exactly he knows, if he knows about the thefts and dirty work. Maddie replies that almost everything, and he understands what she's getting into. He's indignant that she's being too soft on herself. He declares that it is not difficult with her, but simply impossible, and the girl snaps back indignantly. Knox asks to listen and says that he decided to sort it out, thinking that she was simply going to deceive the Duke. Julian Kun Londonis is the only son of the Crown Prince, and the Kun part of the name belongs to the recognized elder of the line. After his parents fell into eternal sleep, his uncle, Lafayette Paragon Londonis, took the throne, and the Duke himself began to frequent the slums. There are no other rumors about him, no women, no children. He is just a kind person. Knox says she shouldn't marry him because he already feels sorry for the Duke. Maddie responds by kicking the chair, causing the guy to fall. Knox is outraged, saying that she is ruining other people's lives and is generally terrible. Maddie declares that she will marry, and orders him to find out everything about Count Montesando, his past and children. The guy asks who it is, and she replies that it is her fiancé's uncle. He wonders if he's so hard to get along with and asks if he's rich. Maddie replies that the bastard was trying to harm the Duke. He's encroached on what's hers, and he'll pay for it. Knox thinks things are bad. The main character decides that he encroached on her money, and for this she will give him hell. Knox thinks it's dangerous there, and it's best to remove the sharp objects, but agrees that the scoundrel should be taught a lesson. He asks what she wants in the end, because without this, she cannot find a way. Maddie replies that she needs information first, then a decision. He asks how far she's willing to go. The girl is wondering whether she should just teach him a lesson, take everything away from him, or even end things with him. Knox asks if she wants to put him into eternal sleep, and whether she should cover her tracks. Maddie replies that they won't do that, because the Duke asked for it. He said not to put people into eternal sleep without reason, and Knox grumbles in disgust. The main character tells him to shut up and listen carefully. The Duke proposed to her, she accepted because she liked him, and that was it. She adds that Montesando has harmed Julian and is preventing her from breaking into high society. As long as the Count is around, he won't stop interfering, and the boy says he understands. He wishes them a happy family life, and Maddie asks to wait for her in 3 days. Knox agrees, congratulates her, and wishes her luck. When the girl leaves, he thinks that Maddie seems to have fallen in love, and it shows in her persistence. He opens the secret room and wonders if it is worth finding out about the Count's family. Time is short, so he decides to begin immediately. Meanwhile, the Duke reads a letter from the Emperor. He ponders what is written there, and learns that the Emperor himself will select a bride for him. Julian is angry, thinking that first they took his father away from him, and now they are interfering in his life. The Emperor could do this without warning, just to break him. The Duke burns the letter and remembers his mother's cough. He screams that he's had enough, that he's just trying to survive, just like she said. He demands that they leave him alone and is ready to survive at any cost, even though he cannot take revenge on those who put his parents into eternal sleep. A bottle of ink rolls to Maddie's feet, and she notices the mess. The girl says that she doesn't need an aggressive husband and asks what happened since he's in a bad mood. The guy replies that he does and doesn't want to talk right now, suggesting he come tomorrow. Maddie suggests they go together. He is surprised, and she comes closer and whispers that they are being watched. Someone is hiding behind the trees. They are not armed, which means they are not mercenaries, but rather they are checking their marriage. The Duke thinks about the Emperor's spies, and Maddie asks him to relax and smile. She offers to show how much they love each other and pulls him towards her. The lady whispers that if he is unhappy, he should endure it. She is not thrilled either. The Duke realizes that her touch is devoid of feeling. He slightly pushes her away and whispers that if he plays, he will play to the end, and there will be no way to do it without a kiss. Maddie agrees and kisses him, and he remembers her words about not falling into eternal sleep. That she is alive and will live, and that she will destroy anyone who tries to harm him. She promised to be the first guardian who wouldn't run away, and he feels her soft lips. Her heart beats louder than her thoughts, and Maddie watches the observer. The Duke collects his thoughts and reminds himself that this is just a contract. The lady whispers that the performance must go on. The guy asks where her coat is, because he asked her to wear it. Maddie replies that she went out wearing it but gave it to the cab driver, and he wonders why. She says that the cab driver was staring, and she still has 3 years to live here, so let the servants get used to it. The Duke doubts whether she will survive, and the girl replies that since he is not leaving, something more convincing is needed and offers to undress her. The man is shocked, and she calmly notes that under the dress, there is only underwear. She adds that the observer is persistent and needs to be finally convinced. The lady lies down on the table and remarks how convenient it is that it is tidy. The Duke leans towards her again, about to kiss her. But Maddie pushes him away and says that the observer has left and she is tired of this performance. She warns that it is too early to relax, and they will have to move the table for another half hour before going to bed. The next morning, someone knocks on his office door and asks if he's awake. The Duke feels something warm and thinks that he fell asleep yesterday in the study, surprised by the blanket. When he wakes up, he sees Maddie's dress on himself and realizes that they slept separately, not knowing what happened during the night. Looking around, he realizes that it is just a dress and immediately wonders where she is. Looking at the floor nearby, he notices a lady curled up in the carpet. Julian grumbles that she should hide better and not worry about him, after which he asks her to wake up, but the girl does not respond. The Duke jokes that he will pay extra if she wakes up, and at that very moment the lady crawls out of the carpet. She says it's perfect and asks him to keep smiling like that. Julian realizes how absurd the situation is. Maddie adds that he looks incredibly cute and asks him to go open the door, but not swing it all the way open. He agrees and notes that moving the table was a good idea, since even the head butler came. Maddie merely reminds him that she told him to trust her. The man opens the door and the butler immediately addresses his lordship. The Duke asks what is needed so early and hears in response that his grace should get dressed and go down to the reception room. Mr. Crockton Vine has arrived. Julian understands that Vine must have heard about the wedding and that the meeting would have taken place sooner or later anyway, but he can't meet like this, with disheveled hair and an empty look. He hopes that Maddie will at least tidy herself up, and opening the door to the reception area, he sees a guy with red hair. He immediately stands up and addresses Julian. Crockton apologizes for the rush and immediately asks if he is really going to get married. Julian recalls that they walked side by side since childhood and went through many trials together. Even when his father fell into eternal sleep and his uncle became emperor, Crockton did not turn his back on him. He underwent knightly training, received a title, but still returned to Julian. He never became his knight, but there were no secrets between them. They shared everything. Julian simply didn't want to drag him down with him to his inevitable death. At least that's how it was before the wedding news, and Julian says that's exactly how things worked out. Crockton is surprised that he didn't say a word to him. He also asks if Julian understands who he is dealing with. She wasn't just from the slums, she was a pickpocket and a petty thief. The Duke replies that he knew this and fell in love anyway. Crockton asks if he's serious. Julian realizes Maddie is a fraud. But only he saw this side. Crockton notices that Julian smiled at the thought of her, which means he truly loves her. After a pause, he asks if the Duke is sure she is not deceiving him. Julian understands that he is now deceiving Crockton, but remains silent. Crockton says he heard she was seen with another man, and the Duke, shocked, asks what he's talking about. He wonders if she really has someone. Crockton clarifies whether they are talking about the same girl, the brown-haired, green-eyed one. A pickpocket and mercenary, nicknamed Maddie. Julian realizes the description doesn't match, and is furious with himself. He asks what the man looks like and if his hair is silver. Crockton is surprised by such specifics. Julian flares up and says that Maddie claimed her type was silver hair and blue eyes. Crockton smirks, and the Duke starts to get worked up. Crockton says that she fooled him and lives with another man, then clarifies that she may not live with him, but she definitely drinks with him. She goes to bars with the same man. Julian is shocked to think she might have a lover. They are officially engaged, and such behavior seems unthinkable. The Duke jumps up, indignant at what is happening. He becomes confused and asks if Crockton understands this, but Crockton advises him to just calm down. Crockton says the encounters occur at night, and describes a young man with slightly reddish hair. Julian cries out that it's copper, not silver. Crockton realizes the Duke is on edge. He suggests thinking logically, because if type were important, everything would be different. Julian decides that she lied even about the smallest details, and cannot be trusted. Crockton asks if this means a break, but the Duke replies that it does not. Crockton says that he has told everything, and let Julian do as he wants, adding that he got involved with the wrong woman. The Duke replies that he loves her, and therefore believes her. He says that Maddie will choose him, although deep down he only hopes so. Crockton asks about Astrid, and whether Julian told him about her. Julian coldly replies that he asked not to mention this name. Crockton remarks that he can't avoid the topic forever. Julian says that the London's line will end with him, and the less they know, the better. Crockton asks if that means he'll leave things as they are. The Duke asks her to tell him that he will visit her soon, and turning around, sees Maddie. He recalls Crockton's words about the night meetings and the reddish-haired man. Julian decides to pretend everything is fine and asks why she is standing in the aisle. Maddie replies that she decided to wait because the conversation seemed important. The Duke remembers what they talked about, and hopes she didn't hear anything. He pulls himself together and introduces his bride to Crockton. Maddie bows. Julian explains that Crockton Vine is a knight of the Imperial Order and his close friend. Crockton coldly replies that they will see about that, and advises her to stay away. Maddie smiles and remarks that they have an unusual friendship, since they don't even wish each other happiness. She asks if he's kissed the Duke, and says she already has. Crockton snaps at her lack of manners. Maddie replies that if she were noble, she would become a knight and live a peaceful life. Crockton doubts it's that simple. She says it's all about swordsmanship and places it on his neck. Julian yells at her to put the sword down. Maddie replies that he started it. The Duke asks to lower the weapon and apologizes to Crockton, asking him to wait. Crocton realizes that he didn't even notice how the sword ended up at his throat. He realizes that she is more than just a pickpocket, and this could interfere with his plans. He thinks Julian should really fall in love. As they walk out, Maddie pulls her hand away. She says there's no one around and let him talk. Julian is outraged by her behavior. He says he doesn't care how she treats others, but he could have been more polite with Crocton. Maddie replies that the knight came without a uniform and with a sword on his belt. Julian gets angry and says that not everyone lives a lie like she does. Maddie agrees that she is a liar. Julian tells her to sort out her personal life. She has 3 years to be a duchess, and if the contract is discovered, it will all be over. Maddie asks what he's talking about and hears about a red-haired guy. She asks if it's him she's talking about, and Julian is surprised if there are several of them. Maddie hits him and calls him a fool. She says it's disgusting and leaves. Julian shouts at her, asking where she's going. Seeing her mount her horse, he realizes she has lied again. Maddie says she will do as her beloved wishes. She decides to get to the source of the rumors. No one in the slums would have called her and Knox lovers. So either Crocton distorted the information, or she was being monitored. She considers Crocton the prime suspect and sends a message to the Duke through a servant. Maddie remembers the conversation about Astrid. She decides to reveal the dirty secrets of Julian and his friend. 2 days later, she watches and realizes that he is not just a knight. He is an imperial knight who skips training and receives different amounts of milk on weekdays and weekends. Someone allows him to break the rules. Before leaving, he changes horses, hiding the route. He looks at the dancing people and goes into the alley. One man says they don't serve food there. Maddie responds with disappointment. He says that a single mother lives there and advises going to the neighbors. Maddie thanks him and leaves him the cloak. She thinks the secrets here are strange and something doesn't add up. The name Astrid can only belong to a noblewoman, and she suspects illegitimate origins. Maddie doesn't understand why it's necessary to hide. As Julian's guard, she needs to eliminate all risks. Meanwhile, the maids are discussing that Maddie has been missing for 3 days. Riley recalls the Duke asking if she had taken anything with her. The maid is indignant that Maddie is not a thief and only took 1 dress. The maid is surprised because receptions require many more outfits. The main character cautiously asked if this was true, then apologized and said that she never bought clothes. The maid cried out that she'd only intended to take 1 outfit and was afraid of overdoing it. How could anyone even suspect her? And what kind of disgraceful Duke was this? The woman noted that it was not a matter of insulting the Duke, but rather that someone had disappeared for 3 days without saying a word. The cook turned to the lady and said that although she was harsh, she was definitely not a bad person. He remembered how last time she asked him to take her to the slums and there asked if he had a daughter. She said the dandelion bracelet was very cute and asked if his daughter had painted the flower on his nails because it was obvious how much she loved her dad. The man was surprised when she managed to notice this, and the girl simply took off her cape. She handed it to the man and told him to give it to his daughter. The servant was surprised and asked why. The girl explained that they were both currently in a tough financial situation, so they should help each other, and admitted that she had also dreamed of having beautiful clothes as a child. She added that they were unlikely to see each other often again, asked him not to look at her so angrily, and suggested that they part on a good note, even if she was kicked out. The man admitted that she might have had a poor upbringing, but she had a generous soul, and the maid confirmed that Maddie was indeed a good girl. Someone was indignant. Did they really fall for her trick, after all? The Duke doesn't eat or sleep for days, so how can they be on her side? The maid replied that Maddie would not avoid, and she herself said that she would leave only with the Duke's permission, so she believed her. The man yelled that she hadn't returned yet, meaning she'd gone looking for a new man in the slums to fool. Riley asked who he thought the girl was. At that moment, the man turned around, and everyone noticed the girl in the window. The Duke, however, was in his office and realized she had been missing for over 2 days. He remembered how she said that she would not let him fall into eternal sleep, would not run away, and would protect him until the end. He also remembered his words about how not everyone in the world lives by lies and deception like she does. He wondered if the lady had disappeared forever, but decided it was most likely due to the terms of the contract and his request to stay away from other men. The guy slammed his fist on the table and screamed that he didn't care about the others as long as she didn't disappear silently. He wondered if she was really ready to give up $1 billion and who she loved so much. At that moment, there was a knock on the door of the office, and his lordship was informed that she had returned. Her condition looked bad, and the man was afraid that something serious had happened to Maddie. When he saw the lady, he got angry, walked up to her, and told her that she was missing without saying a word. He asked who she had met and why she looked so confused, and the girl suggested they talk inside. But the man continued, asking if she had really been with him for 3 days, and who this guy was who had made her so angry. The Duke realized that he should remain silent, but he still reminded her that he had promised to give her everything. He cried out that she had promised to be with him always, and the girl quietly replied that she remembered. She said that she returned to his lordship and asked him to look, because she was nearby. The guy noticed her eyes full of love and realized that she was pretending. He didn't understand why he was so angry and told her to warn her next time, even if she was leaving forever. The lady replied that she did not agree, and the guy screamed out what that meant. The girl said that she would not leave and would stay with his lordship forever. He just silently realized that it was a lie and said that she could do whatever she wanted. After he left, the maid came up to Maddie and said she had never seen his lordship raise his voice like that and asked if she was all right. She decided that he was simply in love for the first time, and another servant noticed that the Duke had hardly slept or eaten for 3 days and had therefore become very thin. Riley asked if everything was okay and offered to bring some soup, but another worker muttered that the girl had just returned and everyone immediately wanted to help her, even though he was the one making the soup. The maid reminded him that there was some dinner left, but the man cried out that everything had been eaten and they told him to make more. The main character said that it was okay and she didn't need it, thanking the boss and Riley. The maid asked if Maddie was tired and suggested that she rest, promising to bring some water. Then she noticed that the lady was crying and asked if it was because of his lordship's cries. The girl replied that no, she was just happy, and someone reminded her that she had disappeared for several days and had made the Duke worry. Maddie said she didn't think he would wait, and that no one had ever waited for her like that before. She admitted that she didn't know anyone could be angry if she didn't come back. Before, if she left, she was simply forgotten, and she thought that was how it should be. And now someone hadn't slept at night and was waiting for her with the light on in the bedroom, and this is what it was like to be that important to someone. The girl apologized and said that she was not usually like this, and one of the servants remarked that, of course, he would have been worried too. He asked the chef to make soup, or at least give him the remaining ingredients, considering it a treat for the guest. The man was indignant that there was not enough soup, and said that he would fry the meat, suggesting that they go to the canteen. The main character said that she had already eaten the bread, and the maid turned to Maddie again. She said that there would always be those here waiting for her, and then asked where she had been. The lady, hesitating a little, heard the question whether she really had another man, and replied that this was not true at all. She admitted that she thought the engagement was a joke, but after spending a couple of days there, she realized that she wanted love. So she decided to burn her bridges, gave away her old things and everything like that, and if she was kicked out, she would be ashamed to stay in the city. The maid was surprised why people immediately thought about leaving and did not notice how worried his lordship was. At that moment, someone called everyone to eat, and they answered that they were already on their way. In the guest room, the maid invited her to sit down, but the lady said that she did not want to eat alone and suggested that they have dinner together. The woman objected that it was not customary to eat here, but the main character replied that she was not exactly a guest either. The cook agreed and said that she was part of the family and would always be welcome. The man asked if he should bring more wine and empty the cellar, to which the chief ordered them to bring everything. The main character thought it was wonderful, and the hearts of the servants now belonged to her. The next day, the carriage set off, and the man asked if she could manage alone, and the girl answered her brother that she was also part of the Bartolo family. She got out of the carriage and said that she would carry out the order of His Majesty the Emperor herself. After a while, the lady entered the room and greeted His Grace and the Grand Duke. She introduced herself as Shalome and said she was a member of the Bartolo County. She added that the Emperor ordered him to attend the imperial ball with her. The man thought about the Count of Bartolo and realized that the Count was the Emperor's right hand and his faithful dog. He was sure that he had a hand in putting his father into eternal sleep, and now they dared to send him his daughter without warning. Going to the ball with her meant announcing their engagement to everyone, and the Emperor's letter made it clear that his opinion did not matter. Polly accepted the Emperor's will, and the girl declared that her personal room, the servants' room, and a few more would be enough for her, and asked if he would introduce her to the servants. She came closer, and the Duke said that he had not asked her to be his bride and that she had no manners. He told her not to hope for the ball and to return to where she came from. The girl was surprised, and the Duke noticed confusion and uncertainty on her face, which seemed wonderful to him. But suddenly someone hit him on the knees, and he fell. It was Maddie, and she picked him up, kissed him, and said good morning. Julian thought she had gone mad, but the Countess declared that this could not be. The Duke said it was his favorite and apologized to the lady for the journey, asking her to return. He added that they were playing catch-up in the morning, said goodbye, and the girl turned around and saw a crowd of servants running after Maddie. One shouted where she had gone, the other that she had taken the boss's money and that he would get her even from the other world. The boss grumbled, and the maid noted that this did not make Maddie unworthy of being near the Duke. Someone added that even swindlers can become duchesses, so their Maddie could too. The butler informed Lady Bartolo that his lordship had said nothing more, and that she had better leave. The girl realized that not only the Duke, but also the servants did not care about her. She hit the butler in the face and screamed at him, asking how dare he treat her like that, and whether they knew their place here. The man apologized and said that the servants had been disrespectful to her, asking them to show mercy. The lady ordered that she be taken to her room at the Emperor's behest, but she was again reminded that his lordship had ordered her to leave. She was told that the master here was the Duke, not she, and the girl cried out that the Emperor's order was less important to him. The man apologized and asked if she could come on the day of the ball, since the Emperor had ordered her to visit him with the Duke. In response, the Countess hit the butler even harder, and he staggered. Swinging again, she screamed, "How dare this pathetic butler do such a thing?" At that moment, someone grabbed her hand, and Maddie said that this grandfather had a granddaughter her age. She threw the glove in the Countess's face and declared that she challenged her to a duel. She remembered the etiquette teacher's words, and the lady with pink hair told her to let her go. The maid screamed at Maddie to let go of her mistress immediately, but she only kicked her. Then she pushed the other maids away and took off their gloves. She threw them at the Countess and again said that she was challenging her to a duel, and she screamed at her to stop because it hurt. Maddie said to accept the challenge and asked Grandpa Philip if it was true that women fought duels too. The man replied that it wasn't often, but it did happen, and then Maddie asked why she wasn't accepting the challenge. Is it because she is not of noble birth? And is not considered a lady? The girl with pink hair agreed and asked to let her go. Maddie asked if it was true, and when the Countess looked at her hand, she became furious. She immediately hits the main character in the face, screaming, "What a damn girl she is." At that moment, someone screams at Maddie and asks how she dared to do such a thing. The Countess understands that, praise be to the gods, his lordship has noticed the unworthy behavior of this scoundrel. The Countess also cries out to his lordship and offers to look at her wrist because she is an idiot. But the man just passes by, which leaves the girl in shock, and when she turns around, she then sees the Duke asking if Maddie is in much pain. The woman replies that it's terrible, because the lady refused the challenge to a duel and struck Philip, which breaks her heart. The pink-haired lady screams at his lordship, declaring that the woman is simply crazy. She grabbed her by the wrist, dragged her around, and even knocked over her servants. The Duke asks if this means that she hit Philip, who is almost a member of his family, and his beloved. The girl replies that he simply told her to leave and find another place to spend the night, did not let her pass, and blocked the road. The Duke wonders what's wrong, since he didn't let the girl in, and the butler was only carrying out his master's orders. And isn't cruelly beating his beloved a terrible disrespect for him? He orders the girl to leave, he won't repeat it. But the woman cries out to His Highness and asks how he can send her away, ignoring the order of His Majesty the Emperor, and what about her father? The man replies that the girl seems to have forgotten that he is a Grand Duke, and if she so wants to go to the ball, she should wait at the Imperial Palace at night. The main character asks her darling to wait, and asks if the lady has forgotten she accepted the challenge to a duel. The girl doesn't understand what he's talking about. Then, the main character says that now she will do everything legally, and slaps her in the face, causing her to fly away. As the girl falls to the ground, Maddie declares that it is absolutely beautiful. 20 minutes before Maddie and Chalamet meeting, the Duke was wandering around the garden, wondering where the lady had gone. He understood that it was too much, because the girl unexpectedly pressed and kissed him, and in front of strangers. The Duke decided that this wouldn't do, and he needed to ask her to stop, since there was no reason for unnecessary contact. But at that moment, someone grabbed him by the shirt. He realized it was Maddie. The main character motioned for him to be quiet and said she was going to go tease the girl a little. Then he comes out and stands on her side, and she asks if he understands. The Duke asks her to wait because she has not yet explained what happened yesterday. The main character asks what he's talking about and wonders if her darling is still angry that she didn't come all night. The man replies that this is not the issue, since she did not warn him, and the main thing here is trust. How can he be sure the lady hasn't run away if she disappears like that? The girl admits it's true, but she can't warn him every time. He replies that he can, because she should at least say why she is leaving. Maddie says that's enough, and if she's disappeared and all the jewels haven't been collected yet, then there's nothing to worry about. It means she hasn't run away forever. The man doesn't understand what he's talking about, and the girl asks if he really thinks she would run away without her pockets full of jewelry. After all, then everything on his estate that wasn't nailed down would disappear. Julian asks what he should do and whether he should look for her, to which she replies no. She says to just wait, because she will definitely return of her own free will and be with him. So now he needs to be on her side, which he agrees to. However, he thinks she was only talking about teasing the Countess, not beating her. After some time, they enter the room, and the Duke, slamming the door, screams out what she was even thinking about, hitting Lady Bartolo. The main character is surprised by his words, because she challenged her to a duel. She agreed, and she hit her. He asks if the girl wants to enter into eternal sleep, and if she understands that if she is punished for insulting a noble lady, how will she expect to marry, protect him, and live without money? Maddie replies that she needs the money, so she will not enter into eternal sleep. Then the man asks why she is doing this, and whether she realizes how bad it is. The girl says that she just wanted to tease her, but they got carried away playing, and it all just happened. He'll just take her to the ball, and everything will be decided, and she asks, isn't that right? The man asks if she minds, but the main character doesn't understand the question, because it's an order from the Emperor. But he says that the lady is his fiancée, and officially declared so. The girl asks, so what? It's the easiest way to fix everything. Julian understands that after all the rumors, she draws a sharp line, as if they were strangers, and he does not understand what she is thinking, or he is dreaming too much. When the guy opens the door, the lady asks where he is going, and he replies that he will go tell His Majesty about it. That he loves only her and will not go to the ball with Lady Bartolo. The main character is shocked. But she runs up to her darling and asks if he has any secrets. For example, a mistress or someone like that, which would be worth knowing about in advance because if something comes to light, it will be difficult to sort out later. He replies that there is nothing like that, and the girl, looking at him, says that this is excellent. She says goodbye to him and wishes not to fall into eternal sleep on the way. The man turns around, and the lady, smiling, calls him her beloved again, and understands that Astrid knows how to hurt with words. Sometime later, at the Imperial Palace, a servant reports that His Majesty is ready to receive the Duke. Julian understands that he was made to wait for 2 hours and was not even offered tea, but the consent itself is already surprising, and the servant invites the Grand Duke in. He enters and sees the Emperor and the Empress. The Emperor says he hasn't seen Julian for a long time, and Julian greets His Majesty. At the same time, at the Duke's estate, the main character approaches the butler and asks her uncle how his face is. He says that Lady Maddie has arrived, and the girl asks since when she is a lady, and asks him to address her without formalities. The man smiles and asks what brought her to him. The girl replies that she brought 2 eggs, one for herself and one for him, because for such a small girl, the Countess has a powerful punch. She applies the egg to the bruise and says it immediately feels better. The man asks how she knows that he has a granddaughter her age, and the main character replies that at his age it is not surprising. She only asks him not to mention that he wasn't married yet, and if so, she apologizes. The man replies that he was married, his wife is waiting for him in the afterlife, and his children have already started families. The girl says she has a question, and the man allows her to ask whatever she wants. She asks if their dear Duke has another woman. The man is shocked, and the girl says he doesn't tell her, but she has her suspicions. She admits that she wants to be prepared for the inevitable separation. The interlocutor swears to Maddie that his lordship loves only her, but the girl notices that he sometimes looks thoughtfully to the south. And in her dreams, she often calls out to someone named Astrid. She says she lived in the slums for a long time and is a light sleeper, and she's a little offended that she heard it. Even if she leaves the estate, she will still write to Uncle Philip if he doesn't mind. The man replies that this is not the Duke's beloved, but his niece. The main character screams in shock, "Isn't the Duke an only child?" And the butler asks her to be quiet and sit down. The girl agrees, and the man reveals that the Duke has a twin sister. Maddie wonders why no one knows about this. He explains that she was slightly handicapped from birth, and the lady asks exactly what, clutching the egg in her hand. Noticing this, she says that this too is broken, and what a pity it is. The man understands that the mistress still has a lot to learn. He adds that this may seem like a small thing, but for the nobility it is not at all. The girl could not open her left palm, and even as she grew up, her hand remained tiny, like a baby's. After much deliberation, the parents decided that, for her protection, they would declare the baby dead. The imperial court agreed, and soon the news spread throughout the country. She never left the palace and lived there until one fateful day. The day Prince Heidlin entered eternal sleep. Soon after, a fire broke out in the former crown prince's palace. The main character curses, asking what the hell and what other coincidences, because she doesn't believe in such things, and is sure that the fire was started on purpose. The butler says he understood her, and fortunately the fire was small, but it was definitely arson. Lady Dovgar had always been suspicious, and after this, she decided that someone might find out about her daughter and send assassins. Therefore, since her existence was a secret, she decided to raise the baby outside the palace as an ordinary person. The protagonist asks if she really got married and had a child after that. The man replies that perhaps even the girl doesn't understand what that means. He says that after she sent her daughter away, Lady Dovgar cut off all ties. She probably thought it was safer, and they don't know her fate, but since nothing has come up, we can assume that she is doing well. Maddie says she's most interested in how the Duke knows about his niece. The man replies that he cannot tell, and asks only to know that now his lordship loves only her. The girl is a little surprised, then says that she understands and thanks him. She admits that she loves his lordship very, very much, like heaven and like earth. From the day she saw him, she knew she had to protect him, and now she wants to give him everything she has ever stolen, and will steal. Even if she has to steal someone else's happiness, she will make him happy, because at their first meeting she decided to protect his future. The butler smiles and asks her to take care of his lordship, understanding why the Duke chose her. After some time, the man is riding in a carriage and realizes that he seems to have overdone it. Recently, the Emperor ordered Julian Kuhn Londinese, the Grand Duke of the Londinus family, to raise his head. He said that Julian was becoming more and more like the previous emperor, and that he was his son. He added that his grandson resembles him even more, and people will like that. The Duke replies that he's glad to see the positive side of that. He wonders if this is really the same emperor speaking, the one who plunged into eternal sleep all who dared to say that he was not like the previous ruler, and what kind of greeting is this anyway? Unlike his older brother, he inherited his mother's beauty, which gave rise to many rumors. Perhaps it was because of this complex that he destroyed all sources of rumors upon ascending to the throne, including his own mother, the former Empress Dovgar. A woman barely able to walk was suddenly plunged into eternal sleep by her own hands, and although there is no proof, he has no doubt. The man says he has heard about the ball, and the emperor confirms this, explaining that it is the 14th birthday of his daughter, Princess Millie, and Julian, as her cousin, must come. The Duke replies that, of course, he will come, but he has a beloved, and he cannot appear with the presented Lady Bartolo. The emperor asks if he is talking about a girl from the slums and calls it a nightmare. He adds that no matter how nice this lady is, would Julian really risk the future of the duchy for the sake of a lowly cur? The Duke replies that he wants a quiet family life and does not intend to disgrace the name of His Majesty. The emperor grins and asks if he's really going to bring home a wild animal and hope for peace. He shouldn't laugh. The Duke clenches his fists, realizing he's heard the rumors. He didn't expect anything less, though. In a situation like this, the best tactic is to be brazen, like Maddie. He cries out that his feelings won't disappear with cold words, and he still loves Maddie. The emperor asks if he understands what it means for a duke to marry a tramp with no pedigree. Julian replies that he loves her not as a duke, but as a man, and if his father were alive, he would support him, because he truly loves Maddie. When the emperor is about to object, the boy says he loves her, misses her even now, doesn't want to be separated from her even for a moment, and dreams of making her his family. Meeting her changed his life, and he wants to grow old with her. He says he loves Maddie with all his heart, but the emperor abruptly orders him to stop. He says whether the guy is lying or not will be sorted out later, because he is tired of listening to this. The emperor orders the guards to take him out. The Duke cries out that even His Majesty loves the Empress deeply and must understand, for love is too complex. He asks to be allowed to love Maddie, but the emperor orders him to leave. Rumors will soon spread throughout the palace. Now all that remains is the ball. Returning, the man tells Maddie he's here, but there's no one in the office, and the maid says she left during the day. He thinks with irritation that she didn't warn him again. At this point, the girl takes off her hat and says that 3 hours have passed, so it's time to lay out everything he learned about Montesando. Knox is surprised by her outfit, and she asks if he likes it. The Duke decides that the guy mistook him for her lover, and she thought that without a disguise, the rumors would never die down. Knox asks her to wait, and asks if she said he was her brother. She replies no, and he cries out why and whether she has gone crazy. The girl says that they are not even blood relatives, she is at most his boss, and then he asks why she didn't say that he is her accomplice. Maddie doesn't understand where he started, because she's already settled everything, and there won't be any rumors. Knox asks if she's found a boyfriend yet. She replies no, she just found the rumor mill and put an end to it. And it's better for him not to know. The red-haired guy asks if her love life isn't as complicated as he thought. The girl confirms that the Duke is an awkward person, and the more misunderstanding there is, the more plausible everything seems. Knox asks if she really came up with even more stupid reasons, and is going to let him believe this nonsense, since he supposedly hates and despises her. Maddie plunges a dagger into the table and suggests they talk about Montesando. Knox agrees. He recounts that Count Montesando was one of the few relatives who maintained contact with Julian. The others cut off contact after the Crown Prince and his wife entered eternal sleep. This makes sense, since no one wants to oppose the Emperor. Maddie remarks that Monty is too good-natured, and Knox confirms that his family was on the verge of bankruptcy. The Count wasted his money at the racetracks. The Countess wasted huge sums, but one day their finances suddenly stabilized. It seems the Countess's mother entered into eternal slumber and left an inheritance. It is believed the Count was a caring son-in-law and looked after her. Maddie adds that the Count made no secret of his affair with a racetrack worker, and the Countess openly cheated on him with a knight, so he clearly didn't get along with her family. Knox wonders how she knows this, and the girl replies that the knight talks non-stop and only pretends to be important. He didn't talk about his affair with the noblewoman, and she didn't care then. Now something else is more important. Who paid off the Count's debts? Knox admits that no matter how much he dug, he found nothing. Maddie says that if he couldn't, it must have been deliberately concealed, and such a thing couldn't have been accomplished without immense power. Only one of the Emperor's closest confidants could have repaid such a debt. This means that they will begin to put pressure on the Count and squeeze money out of his wife, and when the Emperor decides that they are useless, he will get rid of them, and without support, their marriage will quickly collapse. She'll start spreading rumors about the Countess's affair. Knox asks if she's really doing all this just to get permission to marry the Duke. It seems she really loves him. The guy asks what he should do next. The girl replies that he should dress up and go to the racetrack and even win more. The main thing is for the Count to notice. Once he bites, Knox will gain his trust and teach him the secrets of betting. He'll let him win a couple of gold coins and then transfer him to underground betting, although Knox doubts he'll agree. Maddie confidently says that the gambling addict will not stop as long as he has hands. Knox grins, saying he hasn't fooled the nobility in a while. A couple of days later, the Countess is indignant when they finally get released. She sends away the servant and thinks that she should have come with the Duke, but he left without even saying goodbye. She is angry. How can one so brazenly ignore the Emperor's order? And her brother, who lured her here, is also late. The girl decides that these two are unbearable, but if she finds him now, she can go in with him. At this moment, she notices the Duke's carriage and turns to his lordship, and then he sees Maddie getting out of the carriage and can't believe his eyes. Maddie whispers to her boyfriend that she already wants to run away. He replies that her face will appear on wanted posters, and she laughs, calling it funny. The Duke says that if she thinks he's joking, let her try. The Countess clenches her fists and realizes that it was stupid to come to a ball in such a bright outfit, where the princess was supposed to be the main character. But he decides that the most important thing now is to enter with the Duke. She turns to him and asks if he has arrived, offering to go together. The Duke is surprised and asks her not to say that she was waiting for him because he did not agree. His partner is Maddie, and he suggests that she go. The Countess is indignant and reminds that the Emperor ordered her to go with him. The Duke replies that his partner is still Maddie, and if the Countess wants, she can come in after him. The Countess cries out that he is really going to enter with this tramp, and declares that this is an insult to the entire Bartolo family. She adds that he hit her, and if she tells, there will be a scandal. The Duke calmly asks if she is talking about Count Bartolo. He reminds her that he is a Grand Duke and the Emperor's only nephew, and doubts that a Count's daughter can speak to him like that. If she doesn't want to disobey the Emperor's order, let her follow them, but don't expect more. The Countess looks around and notices the people's gazes, after which she looks back at the Duke. The guard at the entrance states that entry without an invitation is prohibited. The Duke asks if even his love makes no exceptions. Maddie says there's nothing she can do and will wait in the carriage. He wants to object, but the girl runs away, shouting for him to enjoy the ball. As she runs past the Countess, Maddie flips her hair sharply, and the Countess says it's a class wall. She declares that the girl can't break her. Maddie loudly agrees, calling it an unbridgeable social gap. With tears in her eyes, she runs away, talking about the monstrous difference in status. She claims that she loves him and will wait only for him even if he leaves her. The Duke immediately rushes after Maddie and shouts that he will never leave her, and no matter what happens, they will be together until the very end. He comes closer and closer to her, but the Countess pulls him away and declares that this is too much, suggesting that he go inside. The Duke asks Maddie to wait, promises to return soon, and not look at anyone else. After that, he leaves. Passersby whisper, looking at the lonely girl. Someone says that she is from the slums and is going to marry a Grand Duke, and another lady remarks that she is beautiful, and this story is incredibly romantic. Maddie just smiles, while the Duke is in the hall. They offer him a glass, but he refuses, and the servant is surprised that he doesn't even drink. Another servant confirms that he did not take a single sip, and the ladies whisper that the girl with him was not allowed in without an invitation. The aristocrats are surprised that he rejected Bartolo's favor for the sake of a girl from the slums. At that moment, someone calls out to Yulikin's brother. He realizes it's Princess Millie. He wishes her a happy birthday, and she thanks him. There's an awkward pause between them, and she says she'll go then. The girl approaches the Emperor, and he asks how the conversation with her brother went. She replies that he looks unwell, pale and tired. The Emperor says he understands because she missed him and promises to arrange a meeting for them. The Empress reminds her daughter that today is her birthday and invites her to greet the guests. The Emperor thinks about Yulikan and doubts whether he was serious. The Duke smiles, realizing that Maddie was right and that the ball will not be remembered as a holiday. No one will pay attention to Lady Bartolo's debut with the Grand Duke, but their love story with Maddie will become the main topic of high society. Maddie put it rudely, but after her scene at the entrance, everything worked out just fine. Suddenly, a servant comes up to the Duke and says that some man has been grabbed by the lady he came with, and he won't let her go. The Duke is shocked and immediately runs out into the street. He realizes that he needs to find Maddie quickly, otherwise that guy will be in trouble. At this time, Maddie is standing next to some man, and he asks if she was really alive. The girl asks who he is, and says that he probably confuses her with someone else. The man smiles and claims that this means she really was alive. He thanks the Lord and says that he believed that she would return to him and never doubted it. He admits how hurt he was when he thought he'd lost her. Maddie scolds him and asks what kind of pervert he is. The man says his name is Jan and calls her Lambda. At that moment, Maddie's childhood memories flash back. She tries to understand what these memories are, but at that very moment, someone suddenly grabs the guy by the hand. He demands that this idiot take his hands off her immediately. Jan is stunned, and the Duke coldly declares that the boy dared to molest his beloved, and even if it was a mistake, there will be no forgiveness. But today he will spare him, so let him go away. Julian also suggests that the lady return. When the main character turns to the guy, he only repeats that she should come back. A little while later, they are already riding in a carriage, and the girl asks who that man was. The interlocutor replies that he should rather ask this and calls the guy an idiot. The main character notes that it is enough to just look, because her darling knows how to flare up. But the man gets even angrier and reminds her that the lady said she had sorted everything out. The girl turns to His Highness and offers to clarify the situation, since she doesn't really know him. She was just walking back to the carriage when she bumped into him, and he, mistaking her for someone else, suddenly grabbed her arm. She couldn't hit him on the spot, so she decided to play along. He opened the carriage door himself and tidied himself up, so she decided that he was not a nobleman. When the lady looks the Duke in the face, she asks if he doesn't believe her. Julian replies that she has never told the truth, and how can anyone trust her then? The lady admits that there is some truth in this, and silence falls between them. The man wonders how many men she's had in total, and decides he won't let it go. He should dig into Maddie's past. At the same time, the main character wonders whether the Duke himself is so pure, because he has a hidden nephew, and let him hold on. She finds out everything he's been hiding from her, down to the last detail. A week later, the girl ends up at Knox's. She asks if he is doing everything as she ordered in the Montesando matter. The young man replies that he spent the whole day in the gambling house again today. That idiot holds his cards incredibly poorly, and it's not intentional. There's just something wrong with him. Last time, he even lost his bets and asks if she can imagine it. The girl asks about the knight who's having an affair with Blue, whether he's tested him, and what his reaction was. The guy says rumors have spread, and now he realizes he won't be able to transfer to another order. They say he'll soon be fired, and he's hanging around doing nothing. The girl decides it's time to throw the bait there too. She praises the guy and says he did a great job. Knox asks why she changed her clothes again, and where she's going. The protagonist replies that she needs to do something important for someone she cares about. Knox is displeased, and the lady asks if he knows Lambda with black hair and red eyes. He's too slippery, like a snake. She met him at the palace, and it was as if he knew her. The young man remarks that if he knows her, but she doesn't know him, the answer is obvious. He wonders if the man is from the Imperial Guard of Londonese, or even from the other shore. The main character feels that something is popping up in her memory, but no matter how much she thinks, she still doesn't recognize him. The lady says it doesn't matter who he is, because he's small fry and she needs to work. Walking down the street, she stops at a house and realizes that Astrid is there. Last time, she took too long and didn't have time to find out more. The girl who handed her the bread, the same hair and eyes, all this definitely belongs to the London's family. Maddie thinks her sweetheart was sure he had everything hidden safely and apologizes for rummaging around without permission. But when you even study the color of the diapers and underwear, it becomes clear that you can't leave it like this. A beloved nephew can become a dangerous weakness, and Maddie can't stand that kind of trouble. So she asks for forgiveness if she finds out everything in advance. Crookhton Baniel is a bastard pretending to be a friend. Crookhton followed Astrid and then met with a one-eyed man who was also watching her. He told him in detail about Astrid's condition, received a generous payment, and left. The maid said that he leaves every weekend, which means he leaks information regularly. The lady understands that Crookhton is dangerous to Julian in the long run. But the time to deal with him will come later. Now is not the time. Looking around, she realizes there's nothing suspicious nearby. She wonders if, out of fear of a leak, he entrusted information about Astrid only to Crookhton. The lady thinks his sweet little fool is a fool, since he was caught so easily. She takes something out of her shoe. As she breaks down the door, she thinks that it is too much to so carelessly hide a secret that they don't want to reveal. But suddenly, she notices someone else and realizes that there's a guest here besides her. Meanwhile, in the slums, someone knocks on the door. An old woman opens the door and invites them in. They say he needs help, and it turns out to be Knox undercover. The guest asks if it's true that she ran like the wind in her youth, because now she doesn't look her best. The old woman replies that she only takes orders, and he says that he wants to find out something. He doesn't know her exact age and asks if that's a problem, since he wants to understand how she's been living all this time. The old woman replies that it's nothing. The main thing is the payment. The man throws a bag of money on the table and promises to pay double if everything is done correctly. The old woman is happy and says that they can find anyone. The man says her name is Maddie, and she is known as the current lover of the Duke of Londines. He wants to know more about her past, and the woman answers understandingly. Then she asks him what his relationship is to her. The man removes his hood. He calls himself Yulikan Kun Londonese and says he's her fiancé. Even close friends don't know each other's pasts, and he asks her to understand his method. The old woman is shocked, and the Duke asks if everything is all right. She replies that she will do everything possible, or more accurately, their young men from the organization will do it. But she admits that something worries her. She asks if Maddie is a thief, violent, money-grubbing, and of dubious reputation, will he break off the engagement? The Duke is perplexed, and she explains that the love of money is a survival instinct, dexterous hands are a good reaction, and if she drinks a lot, perhaps she just has a strong liver. She says that the decision is not easy for the Duke, because marriage is a serious matter. And he clarifies whether he will be able to refuse after knowing her entire past. The man understands that even without further ado, it is obvious that this person is Maddie's acquaintance. The Duke declares that there is true love between him and Maddie. He wants to know the truth, that she doesn't dare tell and share her pain. The interlocutor says that they will be blessed because such a woman is hard to find, although he is not sure if it is her at all. The man asks that Maddie not find out about this under any circumstances and promises more money if needed. Knox smiles and says he'll take charge and learn even things he didn't know. The Duke replies, there's no need to look for him, he'll be back in 10 days. Knox asks if he's really coming in person and how such a good man could marry Maddie's sister. He assures that he knows more about Maddie than anyone in the area, so the Duke shouldn't worry. The Duke thinks that among Maddie's acquaintances, there is such a transparent person, and it's funny. As he moves on, he wonders if Maddie has stayed out again, as he didn't see her when he left. He wonders where she is now, and what she's doing. Meanwhile, the protagonist finishes with the man in the house, and notices that he really did have enough strength. Having settled it, she realizes that he is dressed strangely for a security guard, and his style is too casual. She thinks it's a good thing the wound healed quickly, otherwise he would have definitely lost consciousness. This is not his style at all, and she suspects that it is the work of Crookton and the one-eyed man. He talked too much even after paying, and her suspicions only grew stronger. The lady takes out a dagger and asks if he dared to attack before her. As if she doesn't already have enough internal torment, she turns to the man behind her. He throws a dagger at her and reacts with irritation. Maddie asks if he's weaker than the first one, since destruction only feels good when you're strong. She says the dagger is no longer needed and takes the glass shard. As she bursts into another room, she hears the mercenaries screaming, asking who she is. Seeing the baby, Maddie realizes she has finally met Astrid. She says it's terrible, because she wanted to say it first, but missed the moment. One of the men asks if she's a demon. Another whispers of a double order, and a third suggests that they have been lured into a trap. One says they were told to put only this woman into eternal sleep, leave the house alone, and leave. He admits they shouldn't have trusted the one-eyed man from the start. Maddie looks at the girl's hands and realizes that they are fine, which means she was wrong. She wonders whether she should have sent Julian's sister and niece to another place, or changed their identities. But the sister had already fallen into eternal sleep, and she wondered when it had happened. Leaving the child alone was out of the question, and hiding it poorly would anger the client. If Yulikon loses his last relative, he will be broken and may never recover, because he is afraid of loneliness. She understands that if he loses the will to live and breaks the contract, only she will suffer. Then she waves to the little girl and asks if her name is Astrid. The girl looks so much like someone she knows. Maddie says she needs help and assures her aunt isn't scary, offering to go with her. She says she will be her new mother and understands that caring for each other is important. That's the essence of marriage. The woman next to her screams that she's the baby's mother, and Maddie replies that she's just the nanny. One of the mercenaries shouts that they will simply complete the task, put the nanny into eternal sleep, and take the child, so let her do her job. Maddie grins and tells him how kind he is for revealing their plan. The man realizes she's a crazy woman. She asks, what now? Because they won't get out of there alive. Because this is her job. They are surprised, and one shouts that he does not know on whose orders she came, but they are not going to retreat. Maddie points to the man's hand and says that the 5 moles are the mark of the Haruban gang. When such idiots kidnap children, the elder Haruban becomes enraged. The man, shocked, asks if she even knows him. She replies that she knows and reminds him that her job is to keep them from getting out. They pulled this off without the boss's knowledge and for money. Running past the nanny, the lady whispers to her to close the child's eyes and run in the indicated direction. The girl then swiftly dispatches the criminals, and the nanny flees. One of them swings a dagger, but Maddie intercepts his hand and quickly dispatches everyone. After a little while, she says that everything is finished and now we can go. But the nanny turns around and screams, noticing the mercenaries. Clothes. Maddie asks them not to panic and explains that she had to change because her old clothes were ruined, adding that she came on her master's orders, mentally admitting that this is a lie. She says she was told to protect them both in case of an emergency. The woman is perplexed and asks why Mr. Crockton himself hasn't come. Maddie notes that it's interesting that they don't refer to Julian as Mr. here, but to Crockton. It is also suspicious that the child was left unattended, which means that Crockton also set up the nanny. Even in the room, there was a sense of unease, and the child's condition was worrying. Nanny asks if Crockton really prepared everything in advance to avoid problems like last time. Maddie confirms, realizing he even foresaw the mercenary attack, so her descent into eternal sleep wouldn't have come as a surprise. The nanny jumps up and shouts that there has been a mistake because she was told not to leave the mansion under any circumstances. The main character notes that this is strange because for a nanny, the child should come first. Even if they weren't robbers but assassins, they still couldn't go out. The girl asks if the owner himself would really come to their rescue. First they abused the child, and now they are ready to risk their lives for the nanny. After this, Maddie knocks the woman out and remarks that they must have a very patient owner. She says that she seemed to be very tired and fell asleep, and understands that after saving Astrid, they would probably want to transfer her to a safer place, fearing the assassins, and then, having frightened Julian, they would hide Astrid even more securely. Perhaps even in a place where the Duke himself could not find her, in order to then keep him on the hook and blackmail him. And were they really planning to put the nanny who'd cared for the child for so many years into eternal sleep? Maddie thinks it's crazy. Having intimidated Astrid, they seem to want to completely subjugate her with fear. After all, fear is the easiest way to make someone obey. At that moment, memories surface in the girl's mind. In one of them, she screams that she doesn't want to eat it anymore and won't eat it. Maddie wonders what this strange memory was. She looks at the child and thinks what kind of idiots they have to be to raise their hand against such a small child. Maddie extends her hand to Astrid, says that she has come to save her, and offers to leave here. She asks how old she is, guessing 5, and the child shakes his head, pointing with his fingers. She's already 7. Maddie asks her not to be afraid, saying she's Uncle Julian's friend and has come to protect her, promising not to touch her without permission. She notices that the girl is a man of few words and suggests that she simply nod if she doesn't want to talk, praising her for it. Maddie says she'll ask one question, noticing the scars on her palms and feet, and that it's cold outside, and she's dressed too lightly. She asks if the nanny really treated her like that. Maddie wonders if she was taught to say no to questions like that, and from the little girl's reaction, she understands everything. Then she offers a choice, and asks if she wants to wait here until the nanny wakes up, or go with her and read stories together. The girl is shocked, and Maddie asks what happened. She smiles and says that her aunt guessed her thoughts because she is a psychic. Even without words, she hears thoughts because the girl thinks too loudly. That's why she came, hearing her cry for help, and is now asking. Astrid wants to leave the house for the first time in a while. She remembers a man with red hair. He said that one cannot talk about her, otherwise one will not survive. The nanny forbade her to look out the window, and now, looking at Maddie, the girl hears that there is no need to be afraid, her aunt will hug her. Astrid holds out her arms, and Maddie hugs her, telling her how lovely she is and where she came from. She assures that her aunt is very strong, asks not to be afraid, to hold on tight and trust her. She promises to take care of everything and suggests playing a role-playing game. Meanwhile, at a luxury hotel, a worker approaches General Suishin. He checks if he's arrived, offers to help with his luggage, and informs him that the clothes he ordered are already in the room. The man thanks him. He gives the money and says that breakfast is not needed, he wants to rest in silence, and the worker agrees. Entering the room, the man takes off his wig and thinks that it was a long journey, but still. Count Montenegrin finally took the bait. He seemed to have dropped a bet on the races by accident, but the Count didn't show up for a whole week, and this made him nervous. When he finally arrived, he could hardly restrain himself from rushing to hug him with joy. He advised betting on Lily, Turbam, and Buzz in that order, and promised that he would raise at least 1,000 Tylons. The Count got scared, and the guy realized that he had most likely already lost all the money he had won. That's why he avoided him, but in the end he listened and hit the jackpot. It was a feeling that was hard to forget, and the man found it truly amazing. Turning around, he saw that his interlocutor was already going out into the street. He followed him and asked if he would introduce himself. The Count did, and the boy apologized for not doing so sooner. He said his name was Marseille Swithian, and the Count realized he had never heard that name. Swithian added that he came from Persia across the sea, so this is not surprising. The Count noted that even the name of the country sounds noble. He noticed an expensive, custom-made suit and realized that he had not been mistaken in the man. He was someone who knew a thing or two about wealth. Knox said he'd arrived at the invitation of a friend a couple of months ago, and the Count remarked that he already understood the charm of racing. Knox replied that he didn't really know much about them, he just liked to bet. He recalled that he had left a coupon last time and asked if the Count had seen it. He nervously replied that he had come out right after him and hadn't seen anything, realizing that he had to deny everything because of the money for his daughter's birthday. Knox said that there was nothing to be done, since it was not such a large sum. The Count countered that 1,000 Tylons was a lot of money, and Knox replied that he hoped whoever took it spent it well. The Count asked what such a man meant, and Knox smiled. He said that this was a man who always won, and he realized that the Count was almost caught. He will run to his mistress from the hippodrome, not even suspecting that Knox knows about their relationship. Not knowing about the bribery of jockeys and horses, the Count will trust him unconditionally. It was clear from his face that he was already hooked, and once he had gathered rumors about Suishin, he would trust even more. It's time to prepare for the big game that big sister Maddie was talking about, but when he opens the door, Knox freezes when he sees Maddie with a child in her arms. He asks in shock what it is, because the child looks like 2 peas in a pod with his lordship. Maddie asks Astrid to say hello and says it's Uncle Knox. He asks if his sister really gave birth to the Duke's child. Maddie tells him to cut the crap, close the door and come inside because they're being watched. Coming in, he notices that the child is already quite big and asks how long she has been with the Duke and how she was able to hide it even from him. Maddie invites Astrid to play with her uncle and tells him that if he does anything weird, she should bite him. Knox is outraged. Maddie promises to come back for her before sunrise and assures her that this is true. She says that she will come with Uncle Julian and seals the promise with her little finger, and the girl responds in kind. Maddie, looking at her, wonders how anyone can be so beautiful. She warns Knox that the girl is a man of few words, so he shouldn't pester her too much. Knox panics and asks if Julian is really an uncle and not their common child, and demands an explanation. But Maddie just slams the door, and he realizes she's really gone. Knox greets the little girl, introduces himself as Uncle Knox, and says he is pleased to meet her. He asks if she'll tell him what happened. Meanwhile, the Duke is sitting in his office, thinking that Knox has been too busy these days. Maddie said that if you want to look like a slacker, quit everything, but in reality, it's better to manage people like a spoiled brat. He recalls the words that they were born into the imperial family, not because they were good. They became nobles to do good deeds and be responsible for many lives. He remembers asking if it was too heavy and complaining that the puppy was heavy. They answered him that life is always hard, because both puppies and people are alive. The weight of every life is the same. And then he asked what his father did for a living, hearing the answer about the crown prince. He was told that this was an appointment and a job, and that he and his grandfather had a responsibility for the country. It is their duty to protect others and share happiness, and this is a responsibility. They told him that yes, that is what they are obliged to do. Now the Duke looks at the papers and realizes that he won't be able to sleep normally again. Although there is nothing urgent, and, looking around the room, he remembers Maddie happily coming in, eating, praising the food, and asking about the article in the newspaper. Now the room is empty, and it is impossible to sleep in such silence. The Duke wonders if Maddie will not return today either, since 3 days have already passed, and turns to Philip. He replies that Ms. Maddie has not returned yet. He serves tea and jokes that this is already the 49th question, and maybe that's enough for today, since there are no urgent matters. The Duke drinks his tea in an irritated manner, and says that he doesn't understand why Maddie goes out for the night without explaining anything. He remembers how she said that she would not leave, and would stay with him forever. And he thinks that it was she who promised not to leave him, and to always be there. The butler turns to His Highness and says he didn't sleep last night either. Madame Maddie would probably also want him to get some rest, and the guy realizes that if Maddie is so perceptive and attentive, she would have immediately noticed that he hadn't slept all night. But the lady will never know that he didn't sleep, because he was waiting for her. He realizes that he wasn't experiencing this as a stranger or a fictitious suitor. He was worried like a man who genuinely cared about Maddie and really wanted her to understand it. As the Duke lies down in bed, he thinks about how lately she seems to disappear after breakfast and walks. They haven't even had a chance to have a quiet conversation. Julian wonders what she's so busy with and closes his eyes. After a little while, he begins to feel something strange and suddenly opens his eyes. He screams, not understanding what is happening, and the main character laughs and says that he made her laugh. The Duke asks if she even knows what she's breaking into, and tells her to take her hands off. Maddie asks if he really sleeps in those pajamas and suggests adding a clause to the contract, stating that they do everything as a married couple. The Duke immediately covers his chest and demands that she stop talking nonsense and go to her room. He asks if she knows what day it is and why she barged in unannounced and hid in his bed. Maddie chuckles and says he acts as if she had come earlier, they would have already been married. The man declares that everything is bad, and the lady immediately asks why. He says that he seems to have an arrhythmia and wonders why his heart is beating so wildly. The main character asks him since when he became a doctor, and whether he considers himself Hercules, since he diagnoses himself. He corrects her, mentioning Hippocrates, and declares it doesn't matter. The Duke thinks he has post-traumatic stress disorder from witnessing Maddie put someone into eternal sleep. Now every time he sees her, his heart starts pounding. The lady asks him to stop mixing up strange words, and says she actually wanted to say something important. The man immediately cries out, asking what impotence has to do with it. Maddie wonders why he's so worked up, since this isn't really his style. She jokes that the bed shook 4 times last time, and that an empty cart rattles louder. The Duke doesn't understand what she's saying, and says he can't show it to her. The girl only repeats about the rattling empty cart. The man declares that when she finds out the truth, she will run away herself, but the lady only smiles in response. After some time, they are already sitting on the floor, and the guy realizes that at first she scared him, and then she just started fooling around. But he feels most at ease around Maddie, and even such silly conversations are possible. He's usually reserved and serious, always believing that it's impossible to relax. Maddie says she met his niece and that she's very sweet. The Duke doesn't understand what she's talking about at first. And then, in shock, he realizes the meaning of her words, and again asks what she is talking about. He asks her to repeat it again and clarifies who exactly she met. Maddie calmly replies that she met with Astrid and told him about his weak spot. She asks a respected client how one can so carelessly leave one's weak spot and what will happen if someone uses it against him. The man asks what she did, and the lady replies that she simply fixed everything so that no one would take advantage of it. The Duke is indignant and says that she has a strange hobby, to pick out other people's weaknesses and rock their boat, calling it mean and petty. The girl replies that if he is angry only at her, then she is offended, because now they are both holding each other by the weak spot. The lady clarifies that she reported the matter to the patrol, and now they are looking for witnesses and the criminal. The Duke cries out that she did it in case she had to escape, and admits that she is now his weakness. Ever since he proposed to her publicly, Maddie has become his vulnerability. The main character takes his hands and says that's not true. They made a pact, risking their lives, and isn't that the truth? This means there should be no secrets between them, and how could he hide from his bride that he has a niece? The man laughs and tells her not to make him laugh, and that even if she were a real bride, he would not tell her about Astrid. He claims he's not stupid enough to introduce his niece to a swindler. The lady asks if that's true. Then why did he so easily allow entry into the house where his precious niece was, when anyone could have gotten in there? The man cries out, asking if she had touched her and if the girl understands how hard it was for him to protect her. He pins the lady to the floor and says that he wanted Astrid to live peacefully, not like him, as if she were constantly being followed by immersion into eternal sleep. The man asks if she has fallen into eternal sleep, and the lady replies that she has not. She says she hid it, and remarks that he was wrong to think he was acting for profit, spending huge amounts of money to survive. The girl asks directly if his real goal was to protect his niece. He wonders if she seriously investigated him just for this reason, and is now testing him. Maddie replies that she was simply curious about what he was hiding so carefully. The man looks at her sternly and asks if she always acts like this, suspecting, probing for weaknesses, and testing with questions. The Duke asks if this is really her style, and the girl replies that it is, because you can't trust anyone. She says that even if someone cries in front of her, there's no telling what they'll do behind her back. That's why she checks everything herself. It's her working method. The man understands that for Maddie, this is just a job. She tells him that if he wants to see his niece, he should get ready on the train. This story might be too much for her hothouse flower, so he should gather his courage. After a while, they are riding on horseback, and the Duke asks if it is true that Astrid was raped. Maddie confirms this, saying that in such cold she was wearing only a light dress, and her palms and calves were covered in continuous scars from the canes. She thinks that they threatened to put her into eternal sleep, so they pretended that everything was fine, and beat her with a thin stick, so that there would be no marks left. The man furiously asks how they dared to use even the warning of the visit for their own purposes, calling it an abomination. Maddie replies that it wasn't the worst, because when she arrived, the situation was even worse. There were already uninvited guests in the mansion, and they were holding the nanny and Astrid hostage. She says she quickly sorted everything out, and there's nothing to worry about. The man asks if she's really having fun talking about putting people into eternal sleep. Maddie replies that it's funny because she did it. When he asks, she smiles and says she protected his weakness. It was a hidden weakness, but she found it and protected it, and the task was completed perfectly. Maddie declares that she's smart, and he should remember that. Julian replies that he didn't assign her this, and that everything would have been resolved without her. She says that a true professional helps even where the client himself does not see the problem and eliminates the very cause. Maddie adds that she's not just a back alley problem solver and isn't some kind of recycled person. The Duke wonders if she really said it was disposed of, calling it nonsense. He says it's not recycled, and that such things shouldn't be said to anyone. Maddie replies that she doesn't understand what he's talking about. The Duke changes the subject, and the lady thinks that it was strange and why that word was even said. Then the man asks what happened to the nanny and whether she brought Astrid with her. The protagonist replies no, suggesting that she's probably fallen into eternal sleep. She asks why she would do that, since Crocton would have put her into eternal sleep himself. Julian says that this can't be, because it was he who brought the nanny and even found out about the violence. He's not one to send someone into eternal sleep rashly. The girl calls him a sweet fool and asks if he still blindly trusts his friend. He himself said that Crocton brought the nanny, but that's not all. When the mercenaries broke into the house, the nanny didn't run away with Astrid. She was just waiting for Crocton to come and save her, even though she was supposed to protect the child, first and foremost. Did she really seriously hope for help from a man who only shows up on weekends? And now we can move on to the most interesting part. Maddie interrogated one of the mercenaries and found out where the contact with the client was supposed to take place, and she asks him who he thinks was in the place where she came under the guise of a mercenary for payment. She says that everything is correct. He was deceived all this time. And last night, when she came for payment, there was a guy with red hair there, and the whole performance was performed by his closest friend. At dawn, Maddie told Astrid that she now had to look sad and repeat after her. She showed sadness, and the girl repeated it. Maddie said the little girl was playing well. She even suggested that Astrid open a business with her aunt later, and said that the role-playing game was beginning. Maddie explained that she was a scary person, and the baby was a good girl, so she had to pretend to be scared. She asked me to close my eyes, count to 100, and wait until she returned. Earlier, the woman had asked where the meeting with the client was to take place and where the remaining payment could be collected. The man had replied that it was called Iron Street, 3rd Lane. When Maddie got there, she realized it was time for the show to start and approached the man with red hair to pay. Now the man understands what the nanny was talking about when she held up a note, demanding that he bring 3 times the money. He asks who it was, and the nanny says that it was Mr. Crockton's people. She assumes that Maddie was from another organization and came to punish those who took the task without permission, lying that Crockton sent her. The man realizes that someone has taken the boss's name, plunged the mercenaries into eternal sleep, and taken Astrid for themselves. The nanny confirms this, but before she can finish speaking, the man plunges her into eternal sleep. He understands that spilling the red liquid personally is unpleasant, but if he says that the nanny was put into eternal sleep by a mercenary, everything will go according to plan. He doesn't care whether they split the money or not, the main thing is to finish the job. Maddie says the most important thing is that the baby was delivered. The man examines the girl and realizes that his worries were in vain, since there are no visible injuries. He turns to Astrid and calls her name. The girl recognizes Uncle Crockton's voice. She runs towards him, and the man throws a bag of money, calling it payment. He asks if the mercenary won't even check the amount, since they demanded 3 times more. The girl leans over to the bag and says that she wanted to pick it up after the client left. But at that very moment, he swings his sword and plunges the mercenary into eternal sleep. The little girl takes off the blindfold and wonders if that was Maddie's scream, and if the role play is over. She is shocked to see a man in a red liquid, and her uncle says that everything is fine and the bad man is no longer there. He explains that this girl was bad and he simply punished her by protecting Astrid. He asks if she doesn't understand, and then lifts his hood and realizes it's not the same person. The man understands that everything did not go according to plan, but his niece Juliana is now with him. There were no witnesses left, but he still intended to plunge all the mercenaries into eternal sleep after work. Now all that remains is to hide Astrid away and say that there is a spy among Julian's close associates, without revealing her location. Then the Duke will become his puppet forever. A little while later, he notices people coming to take the girl away. He says that everything is okay, they will go to a safe place now, so she needs to listen carefully to him and follow him. If she takes off the blindfold, she will never see her uncle again, so under no circumstances should she do this, otherwise she will be punished. After this, one of the men roughly drags the girl along with him. When they enter the room, the man orders her to stay inside and not make a sound. The little girl immediately turns around, but falls while trying to reach the door. She thinks everything will be fine, because the girl promised to come. It wasn't Maddie lying on the floor, so everything was fine. She said that if the baby was left alone, she should count to 100, and then she would definitely appear. The girl started counting, and reached 100. She opens her eyes, and Knox asks in surprise if she's awake. The little girl immediately asks what happened to her sister. The man reassures her, telling her there's no need to worry, because if the girl promised something, she'll definitely keep her word. The little girl realizes he really isn't worried, because Maddie always keeps her promises. And at that moment, she actually appears and saves her. The main character follows her into the room. Knox happily turns to Maddie and then tells Astrid that her aunt has arrived. The main character introduces her uncle with a smile, and the little girl immediately runs to him. She also realizes that Maddie is the very superhuman that her uncle sent. 3 years ago, the Duke was riding in a carriage when it suddenly stopped. He asked what had happened and why they had stopped. The companion replied that some woman was blocking the road. She handed the Duke a note right into the carriage. The man thought it was the Emperor's messenger, but after reading the letter, he saw his brother's plea to save her child, as the child could fall into eternal sleep. Astrid needs protection. She's only 4 years old, and she witnessed her father's fall into eternal sleep, after which she stopped speaking. The Duke looked up and saw Lavidia. On the day the Crown Prince's palace was engulfed in flames, his twin sister had vanished without a trace. No matter how many times he asked his mother, there was no answer, and he believed Lavidia had fallen into eternal slumber, so he couldn't believe she had been alive all this time. The man apologized to Kale and asked him to leave them for a moment. Getting out of the carriage, he asked if she was alive, why she hadn't contacted him, and when she had managed to get married. But Lavidia merely silently handed him her daughter and ran off. He shouted after her, asking where she lived, whether her husband had fallen into eternal sleep, and what it all meant, but she didn't stop. The Duke looked at the baby in his arms. A few days later, he finally learned where Lavidia was hiding. But when they arrived, she had already fallen into eternal sleep, and it looked as if it had been done by robbers. Although it is obvious that no criminal hunting for money would climb into a dilapidated hut on the outskirts of the slums. Seeing his sister immersed in eternal sleep, he repeated that this couldn't be true. She had returned after so many years and then left him again, and this shouldn't have happened. Lavidia seemed to know that she would soon fall into eternal sleep, so she abandoned the child and disappeared, fearing persecution. She wanted to protect the child and prevent anyone from getting hurt. her sister was officially declared to be in eternal slumber. So he couldn't bury her next to her parents. He didn't see a single tear from the child at the funeral. There was no laughter either, and it was difficult to coax the baby to eat. No doctor could help, as the trauma of her father's eternal sleep had been too profound. It was hard for him to look at the living reminder of Lavidia, because her mother had fallen into eternal sleep because of him, and he blamed himself for the fall into eternal sleep of their entire family. As the man headed toward the burned-out area, he said that Lavidia had been put into eternal sleep in his place. If he had disappeared, the aristocrats who supported him would have suspected something was wrong. It was a warning that he shouldn't stick his neck out, that he needed to give in and abandon everything. Crocton turned to Julian in confusion, but he only said that the child needed to be protected. He asked to hide the child so that no one would find out, because at least one of their family should survive. After that, he often visited the child, but Astrid's eyes remained empty, and he never saw joy in them. It seemed natural for a child who had experienced horror at such a young age. But who would have thought that one day he would see such a bright smile? Astrid changes, but he remains the same. In 3 years, he hasn't changed at all. At this time, the main character asks the little girl if she bathed today, because they ran around for half a day, and she needs to wash herself, otherwise she will grow up dirty. The Duke tells her to wait, because he's going himself. Maddie objects, reminding him that even though she looks younger, she's already 7 years old, and what exactly is he planning? She's indignant that aristocrats lack tact. At 7, a child is already old enough, and it's inappropriate for an uncle to bathe a girl. Maddie turns to Astrid and asks her to be honest, because she clearly won't like going with her uncle, and it will be awkward. She asks who she wants to swim with, an uninteresting uncle or a sorceress who can read minds. The little girl hugs the main character, who rejoices. Maddie laughs, saying that her uncle is just funny. He may love Astrid deeply, but he can't wash a 7-year-old girl himself. The man quickly objects that things aren't as she thinks. But the main character is already slamming the door, and the Duke wonders in bewilderment whether she really went into the closet. Knox asks his brother what's wrong with him, since his little sister is great with children. The Duke replies that that is not the case, and then turns his attention to the guy's appearance. He asks if they met when they ordered. Knox, surprised, asks if he noticed. The man says that means he was that old woman back then, but asks to wait, because the guy has red hair and was supposedly in a relationship with Maddie, which means they weren't a couple. The young man immediately grabs him by the hair and screams, asking if he's thinking too much. Then he demands he stop, as the thought of him and his sister being mistaken for a couple sickens him. The Duke understands that his reaction reveals he's unaware of the agreement, and for now, only he and Maddie know the truth. This means there's less cause for alarm. The red-haired man says that the Duke smiles at the mere thought of his little sister, and it is better for them not to leave the estate at all, because he is worried that others will suffer in their personal affairs. The Duke replies that no matter what Maddie's past is, his feelings for her will not change. It gives Knox goosebumps, and he notices that the Duke has said something similar before, but is he really afraid to trust her with the girl? As Julian is about to answer, the main character comes out of the closet. She screams in shock that it's a boy. Knox asks in surprise if it's a boy. The Duke confirms that's why he wanted to go himself. Knox says he didn't think his brother was so strange. He asks why dress a boy in a dress and raise him like that, because it looks extremely suspicious. The boy immediately covers Knox's mouth, and he indignantly asks what is happening and why he was hit. The main character explains that he has a habit of hitting someone if he hears bad words, and she has already been hit herself. Maddie quietly adds that the nanny probably got mad at him a lot. The boy, surprised, asks if that's true. He turns to the Duke and says the child was locked at home and simply didn't know how to communicate properly. He then adds that dressing up in a dress clearly isn't the child's cup of tea, and the Duke should consult a physician. The man abruptly asks them to stop, explaining that he was protecting Astrid. If they found out he was a boy, his life would be in danger. It would be best if no one knew about the child's existence, because if the truth came out, the Emperor, who already had a daughter, he would see the former crown prince's grandson as a threat. The girl would be unlikely to be drawn into the struggle for the throne, so he disguised Astrid. At this moment, the main character remembers the words that it doesn't matter who they were before. You need to forget your old life, name, and family. For this world, they no longer exist. Everyone will become a shadow and dedicate their entire lives to it. The main character looks ahead in shock. The Duke asks if everything is all right and reaches for her hand. But the lady pushes him away and asks him not to touch her. The man looks at Maddie in surprise. The girl wonders what is happening and whose memories these are, but suddenly she hears a sound. Turning around, she sees Astrid. Knox turns the child away and expresses outrage at what they're doing in front of her. If they are going to quarrel, let them go outside or find another place. The main character agrees and apologizes to the Duke, admitting that she lost her temper and does not understand what came over her. The Duke asks if everything is okay with her because she suddenly turned pale. Maddie replies that everything is fine and jokes that he was surprised when she slapped his hand away, but she was just scared, remembering the difference in their positions. Julian says he didn't mean anything bad and perhaps said something wrong. The girl asks him to speak more quietly, listen to Knox, and continue the conversation elsewhere. On the way to the secret room, she says that she forgot to mention one person to whom she is very grateful. The guy asks who, and she replies that it is Lady Alma, a rich elderly widow, an eccentric old woman who does not like people, but allowed them to stay with her. The man wonders why she suddenly started this conversation and whether she is trying to change the subject. The girl says Lady Alma lives here too, and she'll introduce them. The Duke is surprised by the suddenness of the encounter, but Maddie replies that she owes it to her and wants to do it. The Duke says that if this is someone important to her, then she truly is significant. But is he, a fake groom, allowed to meet with her? He reminds that they were going to continue the conversation, and she suddenly decided to introduce him to someone. He asks what she will say, and Maddie replies that she will tell the truth, that he is the one she is marrying, because one must be honest with those close to her. She asks him to wait and follows Lady Alma, opening the door. The Duke thinks she was in a strange state just recently, and now she's introducing him to her benefactress, and he doesn't understand what's going on. He suspects Maddie is avoiding the conversation. He didn't expect it to open easily, but if there was a problem, it was worth sharing, and maybe he could help. Such openness is rare in relationships based on convenience. But if she introduces him to someone dear to her, it means he's earned a modicum of trust. He realizes that he doesn't look his best and tries to tidy up his clothes. At that moment, a woman comes out of the room and asks if he is going to marry Maddie. The man asks if she is Lady Alma and introduces himself as Duke Ulican Kun Londonese, saying it is an honor to meet her. The woman immediately asks if he is in love, and the guy is at a loss. The old woman repeats the question of whether he loves Maddie and is surprised by his reaction. He begins to stutter, and she remarks that it is strange to agree to marriage and not be able to answer such a simple question. The guy remembers how Maddie always calmly talks about his love for her, as if it were true, so he declares that he truly loves her. The woman looks at him with disbelief. She asks since when. He replies that he fell in love with her at first sight, and then she asks where they met. The guy looks away and says that he first saw her in the tavern. He adds that the lady was playing poker at the time. The woman exclaims, wondering if he really fell in love while she was playing poker, and calls it nonsense. The guy quickly tells Lady Alma that everything is wrong, and she has no idea how dexterous Maddie's hands are. She won all the money with ease, and it was mesmerizing. Her years of honing her skills and her iron will to share her spoils with no one filled him with genuine admiration. The woman cries out that it sounds like Maddie is a gambling addict, and the other person realizes there is some truth to it. The old woman asks what's so beautiful about Maddie. The Duke replies that she's incredibly sweet and incomparable to others, adding that her smile is unforgettable. The woman objects, saying she's covered in scars and acts like a hooligan. The Duke confidently replies that this is precisely what makes her even more beautiful. The scars are the mark of Maddie's tenacity, and she's not a bully at all, just too active. Talk of gambling is inappropriate, as she simply enjoys competition. Aren't those virtues? He admits he can't even imagine how much he misses her, because every day and every moment without Maddie hurts. He wants to become a support for her, a reliable shoulder after a hard life, but he is afraid that he himself is not good enough. The woman asks him to wait, and, taking off her mask, says that she understands everything. Maddie adds that his answers were flawless, and anyone would have thought he had prepared in advance. The guy looks in shock at the mask in her hands and says that she promised to introduce him to Lady Alma. The girl replies that she did, because Lady Alma is her. The boy is at a loss and wonders if he's been deceived again. Looking around the room and the paintings, he asks what this place is. Maddie welcomes him to Henderson's studio, and he remembers the name, realizing it's the famous artist. His works still sell for huge sums at auction. The lady asks if he knew about him, as he is quite well known among the aristocracy. The man replies that Henderson has long since entered eternal sleep and asks if he used to work here. The girl replies that he never entered eternal sleep because he never existed. Henderson is a fictional character portrayed by Knox. The man is stunned and asks if Knox is really Henderson, and if that means the paintings are his too. Maddie replies that no, the paintings belong to her, because Knox has no imagination and cannot paint what he has not seen. The man asks why she's cheating, since she has a genuine talent, and drawing could bring her wealth. Then he asks why she suddenly brought up this conversation. The girl says that sometimes she plays the role of Lady Alma, and sometimes she becomes Baron de Pongso. She says that she dressed up as him, pretended to be a hunchbacked old woman with flowers, and was even a gypsy wandering throughout the empire. The Duke asks what this has to do with her deceiving him. Maddie smiles and replies that it's something else entirely. She could be anyone, not just Maddie, because she is a professional liar. If he wants, she is able to arrange a completely different life for Astrid, where no one will know about him. She doesn't reveal any details, but changing one's identity in their time is easy. Then she asks if he'll trust her. Astrid can become the child of a merchant or an aristocrat. You just need to choose your status. He can be sent abroad, and he'll pretend to be a girl until the threat is over. In other words, he can be assured of a peaceful life without being involved in the imperial family's squabbles. The man asks her to wait. He asks if she arranged all this so he would give her Astrid. Maddie replies that he wouldn't believe mere words, so she decided to show off her skills. He remembers the first time he heard from her about his niece, and how he was confused and angry. Someone he considered a friend was trying to use Astrid as a hostage, so he was truly grateful to Maddie for her help. He thought she was simply caring in her own way, and believed they were equal partners in the agreement. That's why he was going to tell her about Astrid and the reason for his silence. He wanted to reveal the truth about the boy's parents, but for Maddie, Astrid turned out to be just another way to make money. The man understands that everything that happened was a performance, and he realizes what a fool he was for believing her and worrying. The Duke asks if she wants to know why the child lost his speech. Maddie replies that she doesn't need to know, since the main thing is money, and he doesn't need to bother telling her. He gets angry and asks if she really has no heart at all, because they almost lost the child, and she is already thinking about how to get rid of him. The Duke declares that he will raise his nephew himself, and will no longer hide him in the shadows like a coward. He does not demand that she play the role of a mother, but asks her not to dare sell or send away the child. Maddie claps her hands, and the Duke asks what's wrong. She replies that she's pleased, and that's exactly the answer she was expecting. She admits that she'd also like to live with Astrid, and offers to high-five him. The Duke only looks at her coldly, and she wonders if he can't do it. Maddie says it's still a good idea, because sending the boy alone is dangerous, and he'll be safer with them. The man asks if she checked him out, and the girl honestly answers that she did, because he was hesitant and she decided to help him with the choice. He realizes that if she'd gathered more information, she'd know how important Astrid is to him. She'd been playfully testing him, toying with the child's fate, and he asks if it had ever occurred to her to just talk. Maddie asks what he's talking about, and the Duke says she didn't even ask why he was raising him in secret, or what he was going to do next. It never occurred to her to ask a direct question, and instead she backs the person into a corner every time. Pressing and forcing the truth out, Maddie only smirks. She says that a person becomes honest only under threat, and this is what sincerity looks like. The Duke also smirks and notices that she doesn't trust him at all. Maddie replies that he doesn't believe her either, and that's the surest way. He understands that she's always said that. And yet he thought they had become closer, and even after the end of the contract he hoped that they would stay close. But no matter what he said, she wouldn't be able to understand it. He tried to inject emotion into a relationship based on a contract. After that, the Duke asks why she brought him here. And why did she lie about Lady Alma, to whom she supposedly owed gratitude? She could have chosen a simpler method of verification, or she wanted to make sure he wouldn't say anything unnecessary to a stranger. He asks if she's afraid he'd lock her in the dungeon if things went wrong, and eventually exclaims that it's for the best. Since he was so easy to deceive, she could be sure that she could escape at any moment. Even if he meets her on the street, he will pass by and not recognize her, as if nothing had happened. He realizes it's his own fault, and suggests ending it. He himself failed to separate work from feelings, created his own expectations, and suffered. The Duke says her meticulous approach to the contract is even encouraging and apologizes for his unnecessary worries. The girl tries to say something, but he replies that if the conversation is over, he will go upstairs to rest. At that moment, Maddie's memories come flooding back, and she unconsciously grabs his clothes. He turns around and asks what happened, and when she remains silent, he says that if she has nothing to say, the girl addresses Julian by name and says that she didn't start all this with that intention. He replies that he understands and is ready to silently follow her plan. But she suddenly pulls him towards her, and he asks in surprise what she is doing. Maddie asks him not to make that face and not to leave. She just wanted to show that this is all she's good at, and that she can easily deceive people. She says she can completely change her appearance and voice if she wants, and if she tells about it now, then... The Duke decides he's had enough and pulls his hand away, refusing to let himself be pulled in again. He asks if she had fun leading him on every time. He admits that she is a master of deception and offers to end the conversation now that everything is clear. But Maddie suddenly pulls him close. He asks her to let go, saying her clothes will rip, but she replies that she wants to show off her abilities. Then he will always believe that she is alive, and will see her in every passerby, continuing to search. He will not forget, will not abandon or disappear, leaving empty promises and words of comfort. The Duke asks if she is okay and offers to look at him, wondering if this is another deception. He asks if she recognizes him, and Maddie just apologizes. He understands that she seems to be begging him not to give up on her, looking at him with a desperate and heavy gaze. The Duke hugs her and tells her everything is fine, asking her not to cry. He realizes he sees a completely different Maddie now. The girl closes her eyes, and they both lose consciousness. Julian turns to her in surprise. He sits down next to her and asks if she asked him not to forget. After all, she herself said that she would disappear after the case was completed, and now it seems she wants him to search for her all his life, looking at every passerby. The Duke understands that he will never be able to forget her, and will never be the same again. After a while, Maddie opens her eyes and looks around. She sees the Duke and immediately gets up, joking that she barely woke up, and immediately in front of her there were breasts and abs. The man, shocked, asks if she's confused, and Maddie looks around, wondering when they got upstairs and where Knox is. The Duke replies that Knox and Astrid are in the next room and recalls how his face contorted. Knox immediately closed Astrid's eyes and was indignant, calling it disgusting. He said that the child was upstairs and asked what they had done, complaining about the terrible atmosphere. The Duke insisted that everyone had misunderstood and that it was a misunderstanding, and now he was asking if she was pretending again that she didn't remember anything. He asks her to explain her true feelings, and Maddie is surprised and asks if she really lost consciousness. He replies that she asked him not to forget and said that he should remember her even if she disappeared, and now he repeated her words. He looks at her and wonders if she really doesn't remember anything, and what's true and what's a lie. Maddie says she doesn't understand what he's talking about. She claims it was just a dream, and perhaps she was trying to explain that he would have to pretend to miss his ex-wife. They're not married yet, but they will be soon, and he knows it. Julian says he'll do a great job, and they can test it out if she wants. He addresses her as Lady Alma and asks her to tell him where Maddie has gone, admitting that he is no longer sure he can love anyone else. He begs for a chance to convey his feelings because she promised not to fall into eternal sleep, which means she must be alive. Maddie turns away and says that maybe she just pretended to be immersed in eternal sleep, and ran away, far away, because he was too clingy, and he should look for another. The Duke smiles and replies that he'll try to fight for her again, since he knows how to get what he wants. Maddie says he's a good player, and that's enough. She adds that he's handsome and even took off his clothes to seduce her, and she almost fell for him. The man thinks that perhaps she's not entirely indifferent either. She just doesn't realize it herself. He understands that he himself is not good, since he believed the deception so many times, although it was high time to wake up. He wonders why he keeps getting such false hopes and asks if Knox has any drinks. Maddie says yes, and he suggests they hang out. After a while, Maddie carries the Duke on her back and is indignant that he got drunk too quickly, since he was the one who offered him a drink. He replies that it's not a matter of weakness, recalling how she advised drinking straight from the bottle. Julian says that rum like that would quickly get anyone drunk and asks how she's holding up. Maddie replies that it was only half a bottle, and 3 doesn't get her drunk at all. He's amazed, saying she doesn't seem like a normal person at all. He asks how she can carry such a big man, if it's too heavy for her, and why she doesn't even smell of sweat. She replies that she doesn't sweat, and then asks why he's touching her thigh. And why is he squeezing so tightly, when they're in public? She asks him not to twitch, and asks if he wants to fall, otherwise how can he be carried? Noticing the carriage, Maddie throws it inside and says that she usually abandons drunken drinking buddies, but she will take care of the Duke, so let him relax, they will be home soon.